OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Alright, a very good morning to you. Welcome along. It's Thursday morning. It's West Ham's world and we just live in it. Certainly it's David Moyes' world. Kathleen's here. Kathleen, good morning to you.
Morning.
Shane is here. Shane, good morning. You were saying that you felt happy for David Moyes. Joy for David Moyes.
Just I didn't expect the full-time reaction, or the reaction to Jared Bowen's goal. When he goes running down the touchline, almost Mourinho-esque, you're like, this is a side of David Moyes' happiness that none of us had ever seen. And then you see his 87-year-old father being handed the medal by him afterwards and getting a couple of photographs, and would melt your heart a little bit. It's his first trophy as a manager in 25 years.
I think you'll find there was Community Shield in there for Manchester United, wasn't there?
Was there?
I think there was.
You sure?
But yeah, there was, yeah.
So that doesn't count though, because the previous manager obviously got him to the Community Shield. That's a fair point though. Does that count?
It's not a fair point. You're 100% correct.
Yeah.
I'm being...
I thought Shay was going to say it doesn't count because it's Community Shield.
Well,
exactly.
You know what? If you were the manager that earned the right to play in the Community Shield, then you have a bit more.
Even then,
that's a bit of a stretch. But yeah,
Jared Houllier used to count it.
Well, there you go. I suppose for their little treble they had. I think if you're a West Ham fan this morning and you hadn't won a trophy since 1980, it's a pretty special night.
Oh, it's amazing.
Like that, it was just incredible. And Fiorentina, I know, a team with a lot of history as well, but the West Ham fans just were an unbelievable voice throughout in Prague last night. I'm sure there were some scenes in Prague last night as well of celebration. You couldn't but be pleased for most of them. And then you see Declan Rice pop up on the TV and you're like,
when Declan Rice signs from Manchester United, if he ever does, you're like, oh, that guy's great. What an amazing player. I love him. I love me some Declan Rice. Look at him standing up for what he believes in, not being coerced.
Standing up for what he believes in, kissing the Irish badge and moving on.
Up the Ra. He was an up the Ra guy, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. Quickly switched. But I think, generally speaking, the way West Ham went about their business last night was impressive. Kurt Zumach was off injured, changes things a little bit.
Were they not? I
thought they were quite poor for large swathes.
They were, yeah.
They're not shite.
Well, the game itself was reasonably poor.
It wasn't a classic, but like Fiorentina definitely should have been a couple of goals ahead by the time West Ham actually started getting into it.
Yeah, and their manager Italiano at the end is just he seems to be giving out about everything. I don't know exactly what his issue was. Certainly the Bowen goal was fair and square, onside, took it really, really well, cool as you like. And then you see Mark Noble, the sporting director, almost in tears afterwards as well.
So there was a video going around yesterday of a couple of West Ham fans found him out for a run, and they started jogging along beside him, beers in hand, chatting away, as you do.
Yeah. So no, from a West Ham perspective, you got to be pleased for them. I think David Moyes just, did he save his job by winning last night?
I don't know. I mean, it's very difficult for them to sack him. And he does have that yo-yo tendency, or certainly did with Everton, where they would scrape out of relegation and the next season be in Champions League contention. And so I don't know, maybe next year's a good league year.
It also, by the way, puts a certain stamp on the Europa Conference League, because I have to say, along with many others probably, when the Europa Conference League was invented, I was like, this is ridiculous, this is so stupid.
Weren't you both dismissing this yesterday, going, does it really matter? Of course it matters.
No, because I think Roma, the scenes when Roma won it last year, you're like, okay, this means so much to them, and then they go on and win get to the Europa League final, the following year. So clearly there's development there. I think for Villa fans,
I mean,
you're looking at this going, this
is not for the super clubs that you support. You know, this is not for you.
Well, it's
for the rest of Europe who like real football fans.
Sorry, I meant it from the perspective that there were so many articles yesterday talking about the legendary David Moyes and Declan Rice if they did this, and I just thought it was a bit extreme.
So now that Bowen has scored a winner in the 90th minute, the first Englishman since the 90s to score, do you accept that he's a legend?
He's a West Ham legend.
He's a West Ham legend, of course, yeah. But the article was talking about them being legendary figures of the game, not of West Ham, of a club. I totally accept it from that perspective, but I still stand by what I said yesterday.
I think I got into it. I think I was into it more and more as the game was wearing on. I was like, this means a lot. And then when you see Moyes running down the touchline, you're like, oh yeah, this means a lot to the club. It
is an instantly iconic celebration.
Yeah.
Also, midweek European finals. there's a lot to be said for them.
Yeah.
Especially at this time of year, I feel, as well, when there's not all that much happening anyways.
Like it just felt like the Champions League final is in 2 days' time, and it does not feel like it.
But that's because you're like, come on.
No, of course,
Come on,
if you're a City fan.
If Liverpool were playing, you'd be praying to the gods you don't believe in that they can somehow stuff it up. If Man United were playing, you'd be like sitting here in your Man United jocks all week, right? The fact that it's Man City about to do a treble, you are studiously ignoring it. Let's just call it. It's true.
No, but don't. So you guys support Arsenal and Aston Villa. So don't try and tell me that you feel the build-up has been massive.
I'm going to Istanbul tomorrow. What are you talking about?
Okay, well, fair enough. For you, maybe I'd be pretty excited. Well, that's different. If you're going to the match, of course. If I was going to Istanbul tomorrow, I'd be thinking about it as well.
I don't know. I have to say, I feel like, Ger, you are in the minority in this. Like, normally on a Champions League build-up week, we would be like chatting about it loads. There'd be excitement, and I don't think it's just because there's a certain expectation. Again, it's never over until the final whistle, but that like City are going to win it. I feel like there just isn't the same excitement. Even there's not even the same hatred. Like, Shane's a United fan, and you should be sitting there absolutely stewing mad that City are there.
He's heartbroken. So again,
but I don't even think he is. That's the thing. I think he's just a bit like
accepting of it.
So what is your collective point here? People care less about the Champions League final now than they did before.
I think it's just because of who's in it.
Well, I think that's exactly it. Yeah. So,
yeah.
And maybe because it's Saturday as well. Like maybe that plays into it.
Liverpool Real Madrid last year was.
I suppose. Yeah, but
everybody was talking about it because it's Real Madrid and Liverpool. I don't think anybody cares about Italian football at the moment outside of Italy. So I think the fact that it's an Italian team who we feel like are nowhere close to being the second best team in Europe. Against, if this was Real Madrid versus Manchester City, we'd have been very interested in it all week.
Even if it was Napoli, at least there's a story there.
Fair point.
But like, I don't know. It just Inter feels
in fairness,
different.
if Napoli were going for a double against an English team going for a treble, then I think.
I mean, you look at the history that Inter have as well, though. Like, I feel they should be, like, there should be some credit there somewhere, but there just isn't really.
I don't think it's credit though. Like they're one of the great names of Italian and world football, like all the way back to Helena Herrera in the 60s, and the team of Brema and Klinsmann and Mateus. Like that was the peak Italia 90, post Italia 90. Channel 4 Gazzetta era, but it's just that they haven't played, like even Jose's Inter played terrible, horrible football, and this team plays slightly better football, but like I don't know. I think
it's because it's City.
It's because it's City.
But it's because it's City, and like, because even as United fans can appreciate it, like when Liverpool win the Champions League, they're playing good football. Jurgen Klopp has earned them the right to win the Champions League. When Real Madrid win the Champions League, it was brilliant to watch. And yet City, it just feels like a procession because they're so good.
Well, maybe it's the too much possession thing that everybody's getting bored of. Maybe they're the most common of European football, are they?
Possibly, yeah. Possession, keep the ball. But there is a style and substance to City as well, and yet still there's just something about it. Maybe it's Pep. I mean,
you don't like Pep?
I don't like Pep.
Why not?
I used to like Pep, and now he just really pisses me off. Listening to him pisses me off. I'm like, oh, please stop. So seeing Pep with big ears on Saturday night was like, will break a lot of people's hearts. Not least myself, but
I think you're going to get sucked into it. I think if it's 0-0 after 70 minutes, you'll be like, come on, Inter, come on.
No, but I that's not what I'm saying for me anyways. Like, I'll definitely watch it. I'll get involved in it, if so long as it's not like 4-0 City after like half an hour or something. I'll totally watch it and enjoy it. I'm just saying that I don't feel the same like build up to it this week, or the same excitement to it that I would normally feel about a Champions League final. I don't even feel like.
And what are you putting that down to?
A complete blasé feeling towards City, to be honest. Like, I don't have I should, after this season, should hate them, like, but I don't. Whereas if it was United, Liverpool, God forbid Spurs ever get to the top league again, I just, for some reason, and maybe it's because in my living memory, City kind of went from nothing to absolutely unbeatable. So like there was never even really an and it was at the same time where Arsenal were going whoop. There's never been any opportunity to, I suppose, build that sort of hatred or care about them. And in the men's game anyways, I would feel a lot more if it was City Arsenal in the women's game. All bets are off.
I do think the fact that they played such amazing football, the games against Real Madrid in particular, the two-legged tie. The first game in particular was so good, and then the second game they were so amazing. Is essentially the whole point about sports washing. It really works. Nobody's that really worked up about the fact that City could easily just win this game 2-0 with a clinical performance, and they could be 2-0 up after half an hour, and then the next 60 minutes will be them playing beautiful keep ball, and the fans going ole ole, and maybe some of the Italian fans rioting afterwards. Who knows? But that's the whole point of the experiment, is to wield your power and not be noticed while you do it.
And you need likeable players, don't you? Like,
I love Grealish.
Yeah, Grealish. I think people like Grealish, but outside of Grealish, are there any players in that City team you're like, I'm happy for you to win the
I'm very happy for Kevin De Bruyne.
I was going to say De Bruyne is the one that came to mind.
I've fallen in love with Gundogan this season.
Yeah, well,
he's like a Roy Keane, Roy Kent clone. It's like, wow, how did this happen?
What a mixture.
What a combo.
No, maybe. I think for Grealish's sake, a lot of people want to see him win, but there's just this acceptance that Grealish is going to win 3 or 4 Champions Leagues in his career if he stays at City. Like, this City team are so dominant now, aren't they?
I don't know about that. I mean, the Barcelona team with Leo Messi and it barely scraped did he get 4 in the end? Like, absolutely no. I ain't buying that. Like, and also they might not be in the Champions League next season or the season after. We shall see.
Potentially not.
It's because it's Man City asterisks, says Michael Hill in the YouTube comments. You can get onto YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and leave a comment if you want to get involved in the conversation this morning. Fans of the Super Club need to understand most football fans don't get to celebrate winning a trophy very often, if ever, so it should be savoured. I think this is a fundamental point in all this too, right? That, like, when Man United screwed the FA Cup by going to play in the Mickey Mouse World Club Championships that they did all those years ago and removed the last bit of lustre that the FA Cup had, it kind of was like it's a minor trophy, you know, and that whole like, we only win leagues, we only celebrate leagues, it's a minor trophy. It was like, well, actually winning the League Cup was a massive deal for loads of clubs who could do it, and winning the FA Cup was all-time sensational moment. And maybe Leicester getting relegated and Wigan getting relegated, having post won the cup, kind of takes the sheen off their cup wins a little bit, but those fans felt alive.
But that suggestion that super clubs can't, like, Manchester United fans enjoyed winning the League Cup this year, and certainly the players.
Yeah, now you did because you're desperate. But like, when you were winning leagues, you were like, oh, the trophy's in the corner, no one's celebrating, we're cool.
I do remember when Arsenal won the FA Cup, the amount of United fans were like, ooh, look at you go, aren't you great? I also do love the fact that I've been slightly included in the super club debate, even though this is the first season in like many years that Arsenal have actually achieved
welcome back.
Well, apart from the FA Cup.
Welcome in.
No, I know, like, if the Europa Conference League was around at the time where Arsenal were finishing outside the top 4 and in those sort of places, then like, and they did a run to it, absolutely would have been delighted. Like, I actually felt more upset when they crashed out of the Europa League this year than I did whenever they lost the Premier League title race, because one felt a little bit more.
Well, I think they had a chance of winning that.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, and like, I totally accept that, and I'm not doing down on any West Ham fans. I've actually, a lot of my very good friends from London are all West Ham fans. A lot of them were at the game last night, and it was just like Instagram videos of them crying, of them in like pubs in London jumping up and down in tears, and like, couldn't have been happier for them. I was just saying that, like, I thought that to elevate those players to legends of the game was a bit much, but I totally understand how much it would mean for people that are supporting the club.
City have turned the Champions League into a Farmers League. This is the thing that, like, Haaland scoring 5 goals in a match in the Champions League, you're like, this shouldn't be possible. This should not be possible for a player or team to do this. There's an element of that, like.
What?
It's great. Look, it's great. Like,
and does incredible thing that no one else has ever done. Oh, you shouldn't be allowed to do that. You're too good. No, I'm not having this.
But the Champions League.
What?
The Champions League should be too good for.
Oh, I'm enjoying this too much. Stop it.
I certainly wasn't enjoying it too much.
Well, come on. What are you talking about? It's not a Farmers League. That's like arrant nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
The early rounds of the Champions League are Farmers League. The group stage has turned into something that is not what it once was. You used to get unbelievable matches.
When did you become such an old man, Shane? What happened to you?
It frustrated me. I used to love the Champions League.
The Champions League is still great. The Champions League is still absolutely, it's the peak of world football. Like, we all know this. It's the best quality football over a sustained period of time.
It gets good at the quarterfinal, semi-final stage, possibly. Same as the All-Ireland Football Championship.
In recent years, it's actually been decent in the group stages. There's been loads of teams trying to play good football, and there have been many upsets at various stages. Was it this season or last season that Real Madrid were in danger against one of those Eastern European teams in Celtic group. They were 1-0 down at half time. And also, the Real Madrid Celtic game was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, when Ange went at it and they were holding their own for 70 minutes. Like, look,
I just remember feeling breathless throughout that whole thing that they were actually going to get a result.
What does everybody want?
More competitive.
You want TikTok. You want an endless TikTok parade of 7-second.
So am I too old? Stuff. Am I too old or am I too young? What is it? Well, I'm too old a second ago. I'm into TikTok. Which is it? Come on. I'm not even on TikTok.
It turns out that a bunch of middle-aged people have been TikTok's biggest users and adopters in over the last 6 months. Anyway, we digress. Nobody cares about it because everybody knows it's going to be a walkover, says Shane. And Shifty Lad asks, who has been the most successful London club this year?
Most successful London club?
Good question. Is it Arsenal getting back into the Champions League? Top 4 finished. Bit of a title challenge. Ultimately a swoon in the semi-finals or quarter-finals of the Europa League. Quarter-finals. Or is it West Ham who barely scrape out of the relegation struggles and managed to win, in fairness, the third-tier European trophy?
Well, so this is, I'm going to just support my argument even more here, but I think it's Arsenal, because Shifty Lad asked what's the most successful London club, and by club standards, Arsenal came third in the WSL as well. They got Champions League despite the fact that half their team was absolutely done. They were one match off getting to the Champions League final, apart from...
You don't get a special prize for getting beaten in semis though. There's no third place.
No, but in terms of
Arsenal fan we're talking to.
I know, but
they have 2 trophies.
In a few rules here.
2 trophies between the 2 teams as well. If you're comparing the seasons, West Ham in the WSL came 8th. They went on. They didn't win a game this year until the second last round of the league, I think. So technically,
the women's team didn't reach their targets either this season.
Yeah, but look at the injuries they had. I mean, literally 6 of the starting
everybody
team are
gets
all
injured.
gone.
This is those.
Not everyone gets injured.
Every sport, there's always injuries.
No, but you
for
don't.
All the main teams.
You don't get Meadham and Leeds. I understand that.
Sorry, no. You do not get the levels of injuries that Arsenal had this season every year.
Apparently teams do.
Teams do, but I think it still should be counted as impressive. Katie McCabe getting into the Champions League team of the season as voted by UEFA technical observers, and also getting WSL goal of the season.
Great goal, by the way.
Katie McCabe had a great season. I will grant you that.
I'd still rather be a West Ham fan at the end of the season. Do you know?
To go to a cup final and win?
Yeah. Lift the trophies. West Ham fans are going to remember that. Was it Barry Bonds? See the West Ham captain in 75 and 80 when they won the FA Cups? Bobby Moore when they won the previous cup before that. So only 2 West Ham captains before Declan Rice have ever lifted a trophy.
I think Declan Rice is silly enough to use the atmosphere and emotion of the moment to sign a new deal.
Well, he was I was reading the quotes afterwards and I listened to his interview after the match, and he's like, obviously he wants to celebrate in the moment, but he said at the moment there's a lot of speculation going on about my future. There is interest from other clubs, but ultimately I still have 2 years left at West Ham. I love this club. I love playing for this club. There hasn't been nothing yet. My focus is playing for West Ham at the moment. That's not him saying I'm staying, but it's certainly not him not saying that either. The fact that he even was at pains to point out I have 2 years left. Now maybe he's just trying to get the bigger money, but
trying to get the best deal possible for the club, and the fans are like, yeah, good man Declan, talking the price back up after Moisey talked the price down.
But is there not a universe where Declan Rice stays?
I don't think so. Is there?
I don't know. I just felt, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into his post-match interview, but because obviously he's heated the moment and all the rest, but he certainly sounded in the moment that he wanted to certainly have a think about it. Little whispers between himself and Moyes after the match as well, waiting for the trophy ceremony and presentation. So I still think he's going to leave, probably to Arsenal, but certainly the comments last night caused me a little
Well, if he is on the verge of leaving, it is kind of the sort of thing as well that, you're soaking in the moment, you're thanking the fans, you're talking about how much the club means to you, how much it has meant for your career, why it has got you to this place, and then you go off and sign a nice big shiny contract.
He's playing you like a fiddle, Shane.
Possibly. I fell for it. But
just a comment that I want to respond to here. It says, tell that American girls stick to baseball and other American sports. I get this comment all the time that I am American, and I would just like to say, I used to waitress in a cafe in Sligo, and American tour buses would come in and be like, oh, how long have you been living in Ireland?
No, it's just a Sligo twang, that's it.
Because you're close to America over in Sligo.
Exactly, that's it, last stop.
I blame it for all my family being from the north, and I have a weird Sligo northern twang, but I've actually never even been to America, so...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, thank you.
Imagine how the homecoming that you'll feel when you get there.
Yeah.
Oh, these are my people.
Well, it was funny because whenever I was on ESPN, the Americans they'd be like, it's Kathleen McEntee from Ireland.
Oh, yeah.
We can't understand it, so we put some subtitles down for you.
That's amazing.
Quick run through some of the headlines, because there's loads of stories that we just want to talk about. McIlroy, I feel like a sacrificial lamb. Hollywood star insists he hates live golf, but says Saudi money will be good for the game. I mean, he didn't really say that the Saudi money will be good for the game so much as say that we've got no choice now but to take this because they have too much money for us.
I was curious how you'd feel about his comments after what you said yesterday morning.
I think that he was still pissed off, and he was right to be pissed off, but I still think that he did the right thing by not taking the money. Like, for the rest, he wants to be on the right side of history. He's going to be on the right side of history. People are going to remember that he was the one person, well, in fairness, him and Tiger, so he had massive support from the biggest name in golf history, and it felt like he didn't broker the deal for a start. He's got basically no choice now but to go with it, and he was making the point like there won't be a live tour anymore. It doesn't sound like it's going to be that 54-hole nonsense.
I thought that was getting into pedantic, so when he was like, it's different, it's PIF, it's not live, like, yeah,
Jim Monaghan will be their boss kind of stuff, like they
bought an entire sport in the space of like a year and a half, and he was like, oh well, the PGA is going to be taking over this, and that's the thing that matters. But at the end of the day, if it took them a year to get this far, like, when you how long is the PGA actually going to be in control?
Well, I don't know how much more Saudi Arabia needs now. They've got what they need, right? There's going to be a load of tournaments in Saudi Arabia. There's going to be a Saudi Arabian swing the way there is a California swing and a Florida swing and a European swing, and those are the world's best golfers. I presume all the live golfers will all show up to that, so the ranking points will be absolutely massive. Like, I think the whole, like, I don't know about the pedantic, maybe he needs to defend himself, but like, I kind of feel like Rory McIlroy has emerged from this with his reputation further enhanced.
I think everyone was sitting waiting on McIlroy to go really, really in hard in his press conference yesterday. And when you started to see some of the quotes,
did you watch it though? Cause
I watched it. I was like, this is maybe not as far as I expected him to go. Maybe he just had time to think about it. I saw more people
disappointed about what he had said than people congratulated him, like acknowledging what he said before, but I really thought that he was getting into it. Almost sounded like he was trying to convince himself in the press conference to a certain extent, and I thought he was getting into the pedantics, and yeah, I don't know, I was a little let down by it.
So what did you expect?
I suppose what I was thinking when I was watching it was that he was switching between being like brutally honest in that he was saying, well, they're going to buy up everything anyways, so why not? Like, better to be with your enemy than against them. And then he would also go to like trying to explain it away by going into the PIF versus live versus PGA definitions of things. And I don't think you can sit back and, I know you say that Saudi have what they want, or the PIF have what they want now, because they're going to have the events and they're going to be exclusively part of the tour, but I don't think that you can necessarily write off that they won't want more in the future. And actually there was interesting comments from Frank Warren this morning in one of the papers saying that like heavyweight boxing was being destroyed by Saudi money because no one was taking fights because they were all waiting for the big money to roll in, and so everyone was like, he was talking about trying to get Usyk Fury off the ground.
Yeah.
And like, admittedly, I'm sure there is plenty more stuff going on there, but I just thought it was interesting as someone who for so long had, been like, this is great for the sport.
It could
side to it.
This idea that how these live breakaway players come back in and merge into this new system, like, could he have not leaned into that and said, well, they shouldn't be allowed back into this? Like,
sure, I don't wonder, like that doesn't make any sense.
But like,
you want him to say stuff that doesn't make any sense?
They should be punished. Like, should they not be punished?
Punished for what?
For going off and taking Saudi money. The greed that was involved in that.
But the people that they work for just bought the giant chunk of the PGA Tour. How are they going to be punished?
And then McIlroy's turning around and saying Jay Monaghan is now their boss, and it all. But sure, the head of the Public Investment Fund is the leader here.
We have to wait and see exactly what the makeup of the shareholding of the company that has control is. So I haven't seen the breakdown of that.
But like, this is just the first step. We're all like, okay, so when you see the Saudis taking over Newcastle, that's one thing. You see the Saudi Grand Prix in Formula 1, that's another thing. But this is the Saudis taking over a sport, getting their tentacles in, getting the foot in the door with LIV, and now they essentially own golf. So how many sports will they take over? Like, is football next? Like in 10, 15, 20 years time, are we going to be saying, right, the Saudis run the Premier League? Like, is Newcastle just the first step? Probably. Like,
what do you want Rory McIlroy to do with that, though, is my point.
I don't know. It just felt yesterday that he was. Maybe it's just that he looked like a defeated man. And as Kathleen said, I feel like he was trying during the press conference to convince himself of the positive side to this, because he was coming out with those negative comments as well and saying I still hate LIV and this is not LIV, and you know, I feel like a sacrificial lamb, and look, I only found out not long before everyone else found out. So he was saying the negative things, but he just felt a little bit defeated.
Well, he was defeated. His side, the stand that he took, got beaten. And he came out in the press conference yesterday and spoke about that and how he'd been a sacrificial lamb. Like, I don't know how much more we expect from McIlroy in these circumstances. That was what I took from it.
Well, all the golfers are going to, I guess, financially benefit from the LIV guys coming back in, including Rory McIlroy. So I'm sure there's an element of that as well.
Yeah, and the tournaments will get better. Like, again, golf is unified again. And all it took was a year and about $1 billion, $2 billion.
That's all.
Maybe $4 billion.
Yeah, I don't. It all feels a bit like, do you know, if the Super League came back into football, and
the Super League is coming back into football.
Yeah, 100%. And if that comes back in, and the whole arguments against it.
Can Juventus drop out of it the other day? They said that they're not going to be involved in it anymore.
That might have been the current form of it, but it's never going away. There's always going to be something in the background, somebody trying to get it off the up and running. The other thing here in the back page, so the Irish Independent had this, but it's a Telegraph story. IRFU in talks with RFU over plan to save London Irish. So we've been banging on about this for years, but apparently it seems as if both the IRFU and the Rugby Football Union have confirmed that talks have taken place, although for now it remains at a hypothetical stage, with the IRFU diplomatically saying it had no plans currently to invest in rugby outside of Ireland. The discussions have been limited to preliminary soundings, given the strong bond and relationship between the two unions and the complexities involved if the IRFU was to consider some involvement in what would be a Phoenix club after London Irish on Tuesday was forced to file for administration. So it won't be the same London Irish. It'll be a different London Irish, which means I don't know if they would have a stake in the Premiership or if it would suddenly become a second tier club. I don't know if
the talk at the moment is a second tier club alongside the other two and some other clubs that would come in that I saw.
A second tier but Premiership club.
Yeah, so there would be like a Premier 2, and that would include Wasp, Worcester, London Irish, and then add some more clubs into that, maybe some that are like semi-professional and stuff as well.
With the possibility of promotion?
Yeah, so like it's still very like early stages of what it would actually look like, but that is what one of the ideas that the RFU have floated for potential for those clubs.
Yeah, like maybe it's too late then. You know, the thing to do is to get in while it was still a Premiership club and just run it properly and stop overspending. But we're going to talk about this a little bit later on. I'll tell you what's coming up actually between now and 10 o'clock this morning. So Taggy Fogarty is going to join us in just a moment because we didn't preview properly the game between Galway and Kilkenny. Hugh O'Sullivan, London Irish scrum half at 8:30. Sports pages at 8:45 with John Duggan. Andy Friend, the former Connacht coach now, traversing Europe on his holidays. Andy McEntee is going to join us in studio to talk to us about his first experience in the Tailteann Cup, and James O'Connor and Joe Quaid were on last night reminiscing about the all-time greats that were the 90s games between Limerick and Clare ahead of the game this weekend. It is 7:59. If you want to get in touch with us, you can always text us 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. But now it's time for the cash machine.
Off the balls cash machine.
Right, May was a huge month for the cash machine. 15 lucky winners and some winning life-changing amounts of cash. Mick in Wexford won 75 grand. Frank in Dublin won 50 grand. Liz, also in Wexford, won an incredible 81,000 euro. The winning showings no signs of slowing down. This week somebody could win a cool 60 grand heading into summer. It's easy to take part. We're going to give you an amount. You take note of it, you enter, and if we call you and you give us the number, you win that cash. This week on the cash machine, we're giving away an easy number to remember, 60,000 euro. To enter, text OTB and only OTB to 57557. If we call you back after 3 o'clock on Friday the 9th of June, you answer your phone within 5 rings and tell us the prize amount, you'll win the money. To enter, text OTB to 57557. Cost is $2.50 plus your standard message rate to play. Got to be over 18. You're playing across the Go Loud network of stations. Full terms are on our website at offtheball.com. Get your entry in by 3 p.m. on Friday the 9th of June, and we could be calling you. Answer within 5 rings, tell us the prize amount, and the cash is yours. 60,000 euro exactly. Text OTB to 57557. Back after these, Taggy Fogarty.
Off the balls cash machine.
OTB GAA.
If you didn't get the ball first, like, you're in trouble, because Walter is 6'5", and he's just either fling you out of the way or go around you, or he in many different ways. And Limerick have 4 or 5 at Walter Welch's, you know, so they have a huge advantage with their natural side.
Subscribe to the OTB GAA podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, it's 8:08. It's time for us to preview the Kilkenny Galway game in some detail. I'm delighted to say Taggy Fogarty is with us. Aidan, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Galway are favourites for this, and Galway are a shorter price to win the All-Ireland than Kilkenny. Is that just on the basis of the injuries that Kilkenny have at the moment, do you think?
Yeah, I'd imagine so, Ger, yeah. No, 3 big players for Kilkenny. Adrian Mullen, I'd say, is definitely out. He's a huge player for Kilkenny. He's a massive cog in that wheel. Mikey Butler, there's doubts, but I'd say he's play. Richard Reid will be back. Duggan as well. He had a kind of a concussion the last day, so there's a lot of injuries coming into this game for Kilkenny. A lot of doubts over people's heads, but I'd say mainly Adrian Mullen, I'd say, is the big one, and probably the factor that maybe Wexford beat them in Wexford Park as well. The first game that Kilkenny were kind of put up to and came out losing it, but I felt actually Kilkenny's one of their best games of the year in terms of learning about the team and performance wise.
So what have you seen from Kilkenny? Sometimes we don't learn enough from these matches, and ultimately we end up going, actually there's been a trend that has developed from the league into the round robin that re-emerges in either a semi-final or a final in Kilkenny's case if they win on Sunday. So what are you seeing from Derek Lyng that's slightly different from the Cody era?
Yeah, it's such a difficult one. It's so hard to know how Kilkenny are actually going because of the teams have been playing, and that's no disrespect to any of the teams. Look, the Leinster Championship has been a bit of a damn squid towards the Munster Championship. We're playing Antrim, which would be expected to win. We're playing Westmeath, which would be expected to win. Playing Dublin, which would be expected to win. So these games that we're playing, we're not really being tested. And as far as I can see, Kilkenny are going solid, but very unspectacular, if that makes sense. They're playing who's in front of them. They're getting over the line, and they're getting the job done. And look, I think from a Kilkenny's perspective and from a Galway's perspective in Leinster, they don't have to be going 100% in the Leinster Championship. The view was that they'd be in a Leinster final at the beginning of this championship started, and they are in the Leinster final without being, as I said already, kind of spectacular, without having to be on peak performance, and that maybe will suit them going into the All-Ireland series. So we really don't know what way they're going. As far as kind of what you could see and what way Derek has put his stamp on the tee, he's definitely started to make the boys use the ball a little bit better, and they're using it. They're going a little bit short. They're mixing the short and the long, but they're definitely more comfortable playing that short game and getting guys on the ball, getting guys into the better position and delivering that ball into the square. They're playing kind of a two-man full forward line, which most teams do, pulling out a third around the middle of the field for that famous middle third where the match is won and lost. So nothing spectacularly has changed. It's just they are a bit more comfortable on the ball. They're more confident playing it through the lines, and they're making that run off the shoulder, which is vital. But in terms of actually how they're going, they're kind of an unknown entity, really. You know, you're kind of basing a lot of the Leinster final maybe on last year, and in terms of knockout, because the Leinster Championship now, the Leinster final, it's huge, because you have a 4-week break if you win it, and if you lose, the likelihood is you're going to be playing a Tipperary team who most likely will beat Offaly. So nobody wants to do that. We want to avoid injuries. As I said, we have injuries coming in already, so we want to get them right. So in terms of winning this Leinster final, I think it's massive for Kilkenny.
Can you read anything, Taggy, into the drawn game between Kilkenny and Galway at Nolan Park at the end of April? Like, I know Kilkenny had the 5-point cushion with about 12-13 minutes left, so it wasn't really a case of taking the foot off the pedal, but Galway seemed to be that team that really clawed teams back. We saw it against Dublin the last day as well, so maybe finishing the game strong will be a focus of Ling this week.
Yeah, look, finishing the game strong. I think maybe on the flip side of that, Shane, I think Galway always seem to be getting a poor start, and I think that's something that Henry Shefflin will be really, really looking at. You know, they were down against Wexford. They were down 6 points against Dublin, clawed it back to a draw. They were down against Kilkenny as well, and drew it back and got a draw as well. So I'd be maybe concentrating more on a Galway's perspective there in terms of their slow starts to the championship games, because I think in the bigger games, and I think more in championship games, it'll be harder to get back them big leads, and you know, it'll come a stage where they won't be able to get them back. So I do feel that a big start for Galway is needed, and Henry will be looking at that side of things. From a Kilkenny's point of view, I think one thing that has come to shore maybe is goals being conceded by Kilkenny. Antrim scored 320 above in Antrim, which was a massive score against Kilkenny, and obviously the helter-skelter game we had down below in Wexford Park, it was just crazy. You know, Wexford scored 5 goals that day, so I think Derek will be looking at shoring up ship at the back. I think they need to be tighter. I think to be more aggressive. I think they need to play more as a unit, because that long ball to the square seems to be some sort of a threat. And now Hugh Lauder for me is one of the best full-backs in Ireland. So the rest of the guys need to just filter back when that ball has gone in there and swarm out and kill any kind of threat of goals. So in that point of view, I think that's something Derek will be looking at. And on the flip side, people were giving out about Kilkenny not scoring goals, but we seem to be kind of getting a few now. You know, Owen Cody rattled in 3 the last day. Tom Phelan is a bit of a find. He's playing wing forward, scored 1-4 as well. He's kind of lanky, and he's kind of, you know, he's rangy, and he's direct. So I think that's why he's in there. Because Kilkenny's forward line may be lacking a small bit of pace. They're big, they're strong, you know, Mossy, Keown, Oco, these guys will throw you out of the way. But in terms of getting the ball, turning your defender, going straight for a goal, getting away from the defender and drawing another defender, you know, Kilkenny haven't got too many of those, and that's how goals are created, in my view.
If you're Henry Shefflin, Taggy, how are you coping with Owen Cody? Like, you saw the form, you mentioned the form he's been in recent games. Like, he's a man that he obviously knows very well from Ballyhale. So what do you do with Owen Cody?
Yeah, it is a tricky one, I suppose. Look, they'll have McInerney in full back. He'd probably most likely pick up TJ Reid. Now, if I was Derek, I might put TJ Reid out to the corner and just mix things up a small bit. But look, you just have to man mark him. Grealish should probably be maybe corner back. Just put a man, stick a man to him. But it's the delivery of the ball, Shane, in my view. If the delivery of the ball is quality and it's getting that little bounce into the hand, you see the quality of the delivery of the ball from the Limerick, and I'm only picking Limerick because they're All-Ireland champions. It's nearly a perfect ball. It's so hard to defend that. So it's out the field, and I feel where that's where games are won. It's out the field. It's that hard battle. It's that kind of, you know, fighting for that tough ball, putting guys under pressure, not letting them put the head up and put that perfect ball into. Because if Owen Cody gets that perfect ball, it's unmarkable. There's not a whole lot you can do. But Henry, for me, I think, will be looking at this Leinster final really in terms of consistency. The big thing about Galway, and I've been on the show before talking about Galway and their flaws and their failings and what's good and bad about them, I still think there's a big inconsistency in the Galway team for whatever reason. And I think Henry was going up trying to get that out of him. Look, they turned up against against Dublin, a perfect game for him to get ready for a Leinster final. And they were so bad in that first half. There was just lack of intensity. There was no drive. Now they pulled it back and got a draw. But that's not going to be good enough going forward. So I think the big thing for Henry is the worry of, is this Galway team going to actually turn up, or are they going to be flat? Or what way is it going to be? And that's the big worry for Henry, I feel.
When you were playing against them, there were countless times within the same championship where they'd hammer you and then you'd beat them in the game that ultimately would decide whether or not the season was good. Could you tell on the day, how quickly into a match could you tell, this is handy today? What was that like?
Yeah, it's strange. I think there was two maybe factors to that. I think 15 minutes in, it was more about us, Ger, really, about how we were going and the intensity we were bringing. And, I suppose us kind of winning ball, winning the hard graft and getting into the forward line. And the second thing, I suppose, is the Croke Park factor. I think Kilkenny, back in the day, now you asked me about back when I was playing, I think we prepared so well in training, and it was just the training we had, and it was just the team and the panel we had. We were just so focused and we were just so ready for matches in Croke Park. But I think Croke Park actually takes away from atmosphere, and Galway seem to play better when the crowd kind of feed into it. It's like Wexford. I believe Wexford play like a 16th man down below in Wexford Park when the crowd get in around them, their tails are up, they're baying for blood. Every pint scored is a massive cheer. I think that's massively missing in Croke Park when you have 25-30,000 maybe there on Sunday. And Galway, I think, find it hard to feed off that when there's kind of maybe a clap or two. And Galway tend to drive wides that are poor out the field, and that sucks the energy out of a team and out of a crowd and out of a game. And at the time, I think maybe Kilkenny were a little more clinical. We were putting more to the bar, we were just confident in our own ability, and that's when I felt maybe that we had Galway. But on the flip side, then like when Galway came out and they were ready, and maybe when their backs were against the wall, there was no safety net. That's when you knew you'd have a game against Galway. And when they were really hitting off you, maybe even off the ball, they were angry. That's when you knew, right, well, this Galway team is up for today.
I remember in the build-up to last year's Leinster final, Taggy, Niall Moore and the former Limerick hurler saying neither Kilkenny and Galway were All-Ireland contenders. He proved to be right ultimately. Is it different this year? Like, would you expect Galway and Kilkenny to be in with the reckoning realistically?
I do, guys, yeah. As I kind of mentioned already, it's so hard to kind of put where Galway are at, where Kilkenny are actually at in terms of knockout championship. You look at the Munster Championship, you look at the Munster final, Clare and Limerick, we pretty much know what we're going to get there in the Munster final. We pretty much know what we're going to get from them two teams. Tipperary gone through as well. We kind of know what we're going to get from Tipperary with Liam Cahill when they turn up on the day. But in the Leinster Championship, we don't really know because of the quality of the teams that are in Leinster and the teams that Kilkenny and Galway have been playing. They didn't have to be 100%. But if you look over the years, Shane, if you look at past tenses, Galway and Kilkenny tend to do well in the All-Ireland series. They do raise their game. I think training is up an awful lot after a Leinster Championship, or coming up to a Leinster Championship at least, because it's coming to that stage of the Championship. I think mentality-wise, I think focus-wise, I think psychology-wise, the whole thing is lifted. And I can guarantee you, nobody would want to be playing at Kilkenny or a Galway in an Ireland quarter-final or an Ireland semi-final, because we're just hard to beat. And if you win a Leinster title, you're into an Ireland semi-final. And just say from a Kilkenny's perspective, Kilkenny always do very well in semi-finals. They're so hard to beat. You've seen it against last year against Clare. They wiped Clare. Clare looked very tired. But Kilkenny just knew how to prepare for it. And you're one game away from an Ireland final. And then anything can happen. So in terms of Galway and Kilkenny competing in the Ireland series, I think there's no doubt about it. I think teams won't want to meet them. I think they'll raise their game and they'll play better against the better teams. And they'll play better when it's knockout championship and when their back's against the wall.
Does it matter that they've already played and drawn? Is there stuff that will be after this game on Sunday, we'll draw a straight line from the first game to the second game and go, oh, well, that pattern emerged in the first game and Kilkenny or Galway couldn't interrupt it and that's what swung it? Or is this just a total one-off game where nothing is relevant?
I think, like, really, I was at that game in Nolan Park at the beginning, in the middle of championship, and like, it really was shadow boxing. I felt there was a small bit of intensity to it. The only thing is, and we've mentioned it already, is maybe the comeback from Galway, that Derek will have learned from that and will have warned that you can't take your foot off the pedal, because Galway will come at you, and when Galway come at you, like any team, when any team comes at you, it's so hard to put them on the back foot or win a free. And I think maybe individually wise, Evan Island ran riot that day, and Concannon as well, in Kilkenny. So I think maybe they'll be more kind of focused on players and, I suppose, matchups and nullifying impact of players on the day. And I think maybe watching one or two forwards for Galway will be very important for Derek. And I suppose in terms of Galway, and I suppose their inconsistency as well, it's usually the older stock for Galway, the Grove McInerney's, the Burks, the P. Manions, these guys. When these lads aren't playing, it's the newer kids on the block that maybe haven't pushed on in terms of their self development. Maybe the likes of Tom Monaghan there, like, he was brilliant in some games, but really for me hasn't pushed on. So I think the worry for Galway is the new guys and what they're going to bring to it. But it's going to be a different type of game than what we've seen all year long. I think definitely shadowboxing in Nolan Park, and I don't think the two managers haven't learned a whole lot about each other.
How important is discipline, Taggy? Because you mentioned Nyland and his accuracy from frees is quite remarkable. Similarly, TJ, obviously. But how do you find that balance between not conceding too many frees, because you know it can be the difference in the end, but also bringing that little bit of physicality and aggression, because it's a delicate tightrope?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's controlled aggression. You have to. Well, for me, you have to play on the edge. People are giving about Limerick and things. I nearly admire him for play on the edge. I admire him for really putting in them tough tackles. But it is a balancing act, and you have to be so careful. And it probably comes from the training ground in terms of, it really is your mind. You can't be lazy, and it's about honesty. And it's about, you talk about honesty about guys making runs, but it's honesty in the tackle as well. It's honesty of not being lazy in the tackle, not showing the arm in, not coming in late, being very disciplined, and that's hard work, and that's part of the game. And it's part of the game that maybe we forget, that you're just tackling. You have to be so disciplined now these days, because you'll just be caught for it, and anything high and anything to the head is just going to be called. So it really is. It is controlled aggression, but it's a fine line, because if you back down slightly, or if you drop off slightly, well, then there's your intensity gone, and you're not getting the best out of your players. So you have to play on the edge, and you're going to have to you're going to have to shunt up a few frees. That's going to happen in the game. And when it's in the heart of championship, you want to set down markers the first 10-15 minutes. You have to hit, and hit hard, but hit fairly.
Henry's obviously moved McInerney to fullback and Burke to centre back. Is this working, do you think? And are you surprised that they've done that, or is that kind of just somebody out from outside coming in and seeing, there's an obvious solution to our problems here, let's try this and see how it goes?
There could be a couple of factors there, Joe. I was thinking about that, and I don't know whether it was Henry just putting his own stamp on the game. By all accounts, Daithí Burke prefers playing out centre back. That's just talking to a few Galway guys. He prefers that position. For me, I would have left as was, because I think Daithí Burke is one of the best full backs in the country. Perhaps they weren't putting the ball. Teams were avoiding Daithí Burke in terms of not putting the ball into that full forward line, that little square, because Daithí just controls that so well. He's brilliant in the air. He's brilliant at maybe the dark arts of playing the man and getting the ball, kind of like a JJ Delaney-esque. Left hand on top and winning many balls. So maybe the thinking was get Daithí Burke out towards maybe the centre back to get him in the game more, to get him on ball more. He's a great striker of the ball. He's a leader. We saw him grab the ball there during the year. I think it was in Galway to under pressure anyway, and he just grabbed that ball and led from the front, put it over the bar. That's real leadership. And I suppose McInerney is brilliant in the air, so I suppose high balls to the square, McInerney will still deal with him. But in my view, I'd still have him as was. So maybe it's just Henry putting that stamp, his own authority on this Galway team. But for me, I would have stuck with them as it was, because I couldn't see anything wrong there. But maybe they just want Dottie Burke in the game more and more kind of influence on the game.
And McInerney, obviously, it's a totally different challenge, and particularly against maybe it's particularly different against Kilkenny, or maybe it'll be the nippier, faster forwards they meet later in the championship, with the pace that you were talking about earlier on. They haven't suffered for it yet. Is there any possibility that might be a square peg in a round hole?
Well, possibly, exactly, yeah. Like, you know, the days of the high balls going to the square, that's more so when a team is under pressure. We've seen it with Wexford, we've seen it with Dublin. Like, when you're under pressure, you just hit that ball to the square and you're looking for a goal. But then you come up to the likes of maybe the cuter teams, the likes of the Clares, the likes of, the Tips. They will drag you left and right, and it's a two-man for forward line usually. They'll be putting that ball into the pocket of space rather to down centre on McInerney. So I feel, has McInerney got the legs to read that? As I said already, if the ball is perfect, there's nothing you can do. But I think Dottie Burke just dictates it way better. But I think they just have him out the field to kind of influence the game a little bit more. McInerney, great in the air, but I'm not so sure about the speed wise. And you're going to be coming up against lethal forwards. Even Kilkenny, look, they could leave Owen Cody and Mossy Keown in there, two big strong men. They could have TJ kind of roaming around, because TJ needs to be in the game a little bit more. I think the more games TJ is getting, the better he's getting, but he's still not at his best.
How important is the in-game management, Taggy? Because both sets of managers have a decent bench to pick from in terms of strength and depth. But like, I even think back to the Galway game against Wexford, I think it was earlier in the league, and Shefflin brings Concannon off the bench, changes the game completely. Ronan Murphy comes off the bench as well, Salmon as well. So the in-game management is going to be crucial. So in many regards, it comes into the last 15-20 minutes. It's who gets that right.
Yeah, it's massive. I think it's all about the bench now, and I think maybe even if you look at Limerick, I know we're talking about Galway, but if I keep going back to Limerick, but I think that's maybe one of Limerick's failings this year, is how they're finishing out games, and how that's maybe why teams are staying really close to them, is because the Caseys and these guys are coming off, but they're not doing as much damage as they were. So you need guys coming off the bench to make an impact, and it's huge to get that right in terms of who you're going to take off the bench. Kilkenny have a very strong bench in terms of leadership and in terms of experience. You have Walter Welch, you have Pádraig Welch. These guys coming on, they know how to finish out games. Galway, I don't know whether they have the strong bench, to come on and make a difference. They're real young lads. The Barhan, I think it was Monaghan? No, it was it came on against Kilkenny, got that final pint. They need guys like that to come off to make an impact on the day, and it's huge to see out a game, because it is a 20-man panel, it is a 20-man game now, and the way the game has gone, it's so intense, it's so ferocious. You need fresh legs, but you need guys to come off and make that difference.
Was it McLaughlin came off the bench?
McLaughlin, that's it, McLaughlin, yeah.
He actually came on for Conor Whelan. I did want to ask about Conor Whelan, inside forwards union here, but Conor Whelan, 26, he's already been one of the most heavily regarded forwards in the game. Is it just that teams are planning for him, and so therefore he's still hugely functional and important to what's happening with Galway, because he's not quite scoring at the level with the heavy scoring that we thought that somebody of his talent might be able to do at this stage?
Yeah, I think there's maybe two factors going on here, Ger. I think that the delivery to Conor Whelan has been very poor. I think Galway are a small bit lethargic and a small bit slow giving in that ball, and they're going for scores out the field, which are probably a 70-30 shot at goal, and they're kind of driving them wide. And as I talked about already, taking the energy out of that Galway team. I think Galway just need to be really clinical in terms of getting that ball to the delivery zone of the wing back line and looking up and giving into Conor Whelan. Conor Whelan has been starved of possession. I'd love to know his possession stats in terms of the ball being delivered and what he's actually getting. And then the follow-on factor from that is, as a player, if you're not getting on the score sheet, if you're not getting ball, well, you're kind of thinking, well, is it me? Am I playing bad? Am I off form? I was taken off against Kilkenny in big games. But I just think that the way Galway are not playing to the attributes of Conor Whelan, because you need to be feeling feeding that guy as much ball as you can. You could imagine, the likes of an Aaron Gillan not getting ball. Like, it's criminal, like, to have someone in there and to be so effective and be so good. And Conor Whelan plays with a little bit of confidence. He plays when he's on the ball, his tail is up. That's when he's really hard to mark, but he's not getting enough ball. The delivery from the Galway out the field players is just not good enough, in my opinion.
Okay, so you don't hold him responsible for the level of performance we've seen so far?
I don't. I actually hold kind of the delivery of the ball and the way Galway are setting up and taking these pop shots from out the field. And that's great when they go over, don't get me wrong, and they need to be doing it because maybe it's been shored up out the field that they need to take these shots from the wing back line and the midfielders. But I still feel that it's not Conor Whelan's fault that he's maybe not playing to his potential. It's more the delivery going into him and the amount of ball going into that full forward line of Galway. I've seen it against Kilkenny. They weren't putting that ball into the full forward line until the second half, and that's when they started to motor. Okay,
as we said at the start of this, Galway are slight favourites. Do you make them slight favourites?
I don't really. I'm not sure how Galway take this Leinster final. I'm not sure how a Leinster final is up there in terms of silverware for Galway. There's a bit of tradition in Kilkenny, in Wexford, in Offaly about winning a Leinster title. I think there's a bit more kick in Kilkenny, like they really want to win this Leinster title. The only thing will be for Galway is that going through the front door, I think it's very important. I think for Henry Shefflin, I think for this Galway team, it's important that they pick up a bit of silverware. I think they're maybe a small bit under a bit more pressure than Kilkenny, so maybe that's why they're slightly favourites going in. But I think Kilkenny, if they turn up, if Adrian Mullen is probably going to be out, but I still they're a very good team. And I suppose it's if Galway turn up, it's the inconsistency of if they show up, they can beat anyone, and if they don't show up, well, they can be flat, lethargic, and the whole thing can be a damn squid.
All right, we'll see what happens. Aidan, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
It's Taggy Fogarty there. We managed to get through the whole thing there, Shane.
Yeah, we did.
Well done.
Without saying Taggarty? Yeah, someone in the comments that I knew was going to say it, but they haven't said it yet. I think I called Taggy Taggarty 3 times the last time he was on. And obviously I know Taggy, have been on air with him many, many times. Just that day, whatever it was. I think it was Johnny Wood beside me possibly.
Oh, yeah.
So I was distracted. But yeah, Taggarty. He seemed to enjoy it. I think it's not a bad nickname.
There you go.
Thinking of Taggart, the detective.
It could be like Beyonce, just have one name from now on.
Yeah, 100%.
OTB AM live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Right, let's turn our attention to rugby. Hugh O'Sullivan is with us, who until very recently was a London Irish player. Hugh, good morning to you. How are you?
Hi, Ger. Good. Thanks for having me.
So you've signed for Newcastle. So like that period of your career and uncertainty is over, and we're delighted for you that you've got something to look forward to. But it must have been incredibly uncertain over the last 6 months.
Yeah, 100%. So I was as you mentioned there, I was one of the very, very lucky ones. Really, I knew that I was going to be leaving the London Irish before all of the stuff really started coming into a head. So I suppose it all sort of kicked off really when we got paid late last month, and that's around the time when I signed with Newcastle. So I've comparatively, and maybe compared to my teammates and all the staff at London Irish, I have been probably nowhere near as worried really, because I knew that I could be changing clubs come in July. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind, and the last couple of days really is just a bit more feeling bad, the bit of the sadness for the club as a whole. Obviously the teammates that I know quite well, but outside of that, there's a huge amount of staff there as well, and a bit having been there for 2 years, you feel part of the community over there. Yeah, so it's all happened very quickly, I suppose, over the last few days, but it has felt a bit inevitable, I suppose. Initially when we were told about these American investors coming in, it's all very promising, but it sort of became clear, I suppose, as the weeks went by and as things were changing that much, and none of these evidence of funds that were being promised came true. I suppose it didn't feel very promising at that point, I suppose, and I think then. I'm not sure how much you're aware, but we got a week's extension on the ORFU deadline last week, when the current owner, McCarthy, he came in and paid half our wages to sort of give an extension to the process to try and get the deal done. But from the ORFU side, and at least what they told us on their end, the ORFU and PRL basically said the deal wasn't nowhere near, really, they hadn't got anywhere near as much information as they would have needed to push the deal through. So yeah, it's been a tough few weeks for sure.
Can you take us back to the bit where you signed for London Irish? Why did you end up signing for them first off, and what was that like?
So I came up to the Leinster Academy. I was in the Leinster Academy for 2 years, and then at Leinster Senior Squad for 2 years, and then I just sort of like needed a change as well. And there was no space for me at Leinster, so it was the best thing I ever did. Really, like I absolutely enjoyed my time at Leinster. It was an unbelievable experience there. Some great coaches there. It was Stu Lancaster and Leo, but it was just really what I needed to go abroad, to change the scenery, and to try hopefully get more game time as well, which I did end up getting in London Irish. Not that big a change, like only across the water really, but yeah, like I suppose like I really fell in love with the club. It's honestly a great club. Like obviously the London Irish, the Irish connection is there, and it's very tangible. I suppose like there's when I went there for the first year, Sean O'Brien was still playing there. Like Paddy Jackson is there. A lot of guys over there would be Irish qualified as well, even though they're English born with it, because as they have Irish parents. And even through the amateur club over there, like there's a huge Irish connection. So yeah, and it was just great to experience, I suppose, like the Premiership over there. It's a different animal in the sense that like it's so competitive week on week, and we were very much like a mid-table team, I suppose, when we got over there trying to push up to get the top four. So every week was massive for us. Yeah, so it's a great league really.
And was it a straightforward decision? Did you have other options at the time, or were they the ones who were best kind of plugged into the Leinster network and understood, hey, this guy's ready to come join us?
Yeah, well, Declan Kidney was there at the time, obviously, and still is, and Les Kiss was there, so he obviously would have known Leo. But yeah, look, it was another Premiership club, so in terms of the other options, there would have been. I had no firm offers from elsewhere, but like it was a pretty good option in terms of going to the highest league in England. So I was pretty happy to go with it. Again, like you're still sort of within the shop window, and that it's not as if you're going down to Australia and New Zealand, where like the potential would be that if you go well enough over in the UK, that you might get a shot back in Ireland. But yeah, it was like, again, I mentioned the quality of the league and the players over there. So it was, and sometimes you can be sort of oblivious to that when you're in the Irish system. It's all about like the four provinces and like and the Irish team as it should be really. But like the depth and the quality over in the English clubs is something that's, I suppose, it's there as well. I only really realised that when I went over there.
And the competitiveness as well, Hugh, of the Premiership versus the URC. Like I know you've spoken before, but the jeopardy of the Premiership, it seems to be week to week always competitive. I don't know if you had a difference in opinion on how the URC compares.
Yeah, I suppose it's changed a small bit since I left Leinster, and that I think the South African teams coming into the URC has 100% helped the situation there. You've also seen it, like the Stormers winning it last year and being in the final again this year, and so I'd say teams during the season in the URC feel a lot more pressure to get results week on week. And then it's also given the fact that in the club that I was like when I was with Leinster, like, a lot of the time we were winning week on week, and like a lot of the time when I got chances to play, like that we were already top of the table by 10 points, and like there was a good chance we were going to win the game anyway. So I suppose it was a bit circumstantial in my point of view, in terms of I didn't really feel that jeopardy week to week when I was playing in the URC. But yeah, the Premiership 100%, like it's from 10th place, or it's going to be 10 teams next year now, with 3 teams gone, having folded this year. But whether it's bottom of the league, top of the league, like there's that ability for like any team to turn over any team. Even though like the likes of Saracens, Leicester are always there, so towards the top 4 towards the end of the year, it's like we were, as from Irish point of view, like we were very, very close to. We became 5th this year in the league. We were very, very close to tipping into the top 4 for the first time in a long time. Yeah, so like we were right on the sort of edge of like tipping it up into the top 4. So it was really sort of exciting to be in a club where like you were pushing on and trying to move forward from that point of view.
I know, Hugh, you're saying the end came quite quickly, but actually it had been a bit of a slow car crash over the last couple of years in terms of there were always kind of perpetual rumours about other clubs first and whether or not the contagion would spread. So in the change room, on at training, were people just chatting going, is everything grand here, or was it not spoken about at all at any point until close to the end?
I suppose you like obviously Worcester going first and then Wasps following that was obviously terrible to see, but like the model is a bit different over in England as it is with the IRFU. Like the clubs are backed by like private investors essentially, like, and it's not really like the provinces where they're sort of funded massively by the IRFU. So like we knew that we had the owner Mick Crossan. He bought the club in 2013, and he'd been there since then. Like he had said openly in the press that he was open and willing to sell the club to anyone who's come in and willing to buy it. But like in saying that, he bought the club because he was a fan of London Irish, and he was injecting his funds into the club because as he was a fan. And I suppose so we've been aware that he was looking to sell the club, but he had given no indication that he was willing, that he was like trying to get out of the game completely. So, and to be honest, when it started off, we first got wind of these new American investors, or potential American investors. Maybe the first I heard of it was there maybe just after Christmas time, and like it's all like that's completely positive news, because you have this potential for this huge injection of funds to America. Yeah. Like that was really positive news for the club. Because you take what you're told at face value in terms of like, because you're told, like the negotiations are ongoing, there's a good chance it's going to go through, like it's going to happen imminently, but then like that went on for 6 months and the thing never happened. So I suppose it started off being very positive news, and then as the time went on, it slowly turned into like, well, like it didn't happen basically. So that's so it's a sad situation from that point of view, I suppose. Yeah.
For the team to finish as high as they did with this happening in the background suggests that you'd great coaches and a real proper team spirit. Yeah.
Like I suppose it really came to a head is when we got paid late last month. We still had one game left, and that was like we still hadn't been paid. It was maybe the Wednesday or the Thursday of the week, and like there was chats of like certain lads wouldn't have played, maybe weren't going to play that weekend, see that hadn't been paid, but we got paid in time. But yeah, generally speaking, like the talent over there is phenomenal. Like the academy is like famous for some of the talent it produces year on year, and some of those guys like Henry Ireland is a name, and you might be aware of at the moment, like he's come through the academy. There's guys like Will Joseph as well, loads of young lads, and even guys who are playing the senior team at the moment. A huge amount of those have come through the academy, and the coaches as well, as you mentioned, obviously Declan as Dio Warren Les, but also there's some great academy coaches there, in James Lightfoot Brown and Jonathan Fisher, who were instrumental in producing some of that young talent as well. So like it's weird. It's listen to myself say this sort of stuff, because essentially it's all gone now, because the club has gone to administration. So it's very sad really, the whole situation, because all of that potential there, like I would have no doubt that the club would have pushed on and like would have challenged for top 4 next year in the Premiership, and gone on to like push things properly in Europe in the Champions Cup. So again, I don't really know the next steps to the club. Like I'm not sure. Mick let us know by email that he's basically putting the club into administration. So I'm not really sure what that means for the rest of the club, but we'll see in time.
I think London Irish celebrate their 125th anniversary this coming October as well, Hugh. Like people often forget, I suppose, the impact it'll have on the fans and also the staff, because behind the scenes you forget about all the people that work with the club. We see the players and the coaches obviously from at the forefront, but I'm sure there's a lot of people disappointed at the club and gutted.
Yeah, like as I said at the outset, like I'm very much in probably the best position here, given that I know I'm going to Newcastle, and that like I don't have kids, I don't have a mortgage to pay. There's all this sort of stuff going on. Like but other guys, like there's older guys in the team who have kids to look after, who have mortgages to pay. The staff you mentioned there, like I know one of the coaches, Declan Danaher, his partner is also employed by the club. Jodie's a physio. They had a kid 4 months ago, and now they're both let out of a job with a mortgage to pay and a kid to look after. So there's numerous stories like that. Like it goes beyond just the professional team as well. There'll be community coaches involved in that who go out and do like community work in the sort of a region around London Irish and where we're based out in South West London. So it's just like, I'm not sure, there's probably up to like 50-60 employees. Maybe I could probably undershoot that, to be honest, probably more. All of whom have lost their jobs really, like, so and it's the sudden nature of it really, like I suppose that's why the ORFU put in the deadline of at the end of the month to give the players some certainty. What they wanted to avoid was us going like starting off the next season and then folding 2 weeks in. So I suppose that did help us, but still it's still a massive shock.
There's a story It's horrific for all those people. Like, this isn't sport for them. That's their livelihoods. It's totally different. There is a story in the in the Telegraph today, which is also carried in the Irish Independent, that the IRFU have had preliminary talks with the Rugby Football Union about getting involved in London Irish. As somebody who's come through the Irish rugby system and understands it intimately, what's your instinct about that?
Yeah, so I was listening this morning. So I heard you mention that. It was the first I've heard of it, but it's something I would have thought made sense. Like, having come across from Ireland, the one thing I would say, or how I would have viewed it initially, was maybe like there being a partnership there, where, like, because I know there's such a huge amount of players coming through the academy systems in Ireland, and like effectively, like there's no room for them in the provinces. Like, they can't get sufficient game time, and so what I would have seen as was maybe like some sort of relationship where they send players across to play over here. But obviously, what you described there, what's being reported, is a bit more substantial than that. But what I would say is that, like, which I've experienced since I went over to London and became part of the club, is that, like, London Irish as an entity of itself is, like, it's huge. And from their point of view, like, the provinces aren't really, like, when you grow up in Ireland, you play rugby in Ireland, like, the provinces are huge, but London Irish is their own entity as a club. They're fully focused on the Premiership. So, and like I mentioned the academy system earlier on, like, it's a huge entity of itself. Like you couldn't just, like, the IRFU, it wouldn't work in my opinion where the IRFU just come in and buy it and, like, take over completely the running of it. Like, there's a huge region over there, there's a huge fan base, all the staff, the academy system there has been built up over years, and as Shane said earlier on, there's 125 years of history of the club there. So
so you can't just wipe that out, and you need to find a way to accommodate the local fans who are fans of London Irish, who might have no connection with Ireland, and also those kids who are coming up and want to play in the Premiership and who have no interest in playing for Ireland because they're English.
Yes, because essentially they understand the Irish connection, but, like, they're English, like, to be blunt about it.
Yeah.
They might have some of them have English parents, but really they're English. They want to play with England when they grow up, like, and they want to play with Irish and then play with England. Yeah, so that's, as you said there, you can't come over and swipe that out. There has to be some level of to and fro there, I think. Okay,
and one last one for you. Has pre-season started for Newcastle yet? Are you?
Starts next Monday. Yeah, so I'm flying over to London on Friday and then driving up. So yeah, it'll be a long pre-season now with the World Cup. Sort of extends or delays the start of the season proper, so it'll be a 2-month-long pre-season, I think. So
right. Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And what's the competition like for a starting berth in Newcastle?
So there's been a lot of change there this year. Like, there's a new head coach coming in, Alex Codling, and generally amongst the playing group there's been a lot of change. So hoping again, like, towards the end of the season with Irish, I did start to play. I played a bit more regularly, got a few starts on the bench in the Premiership. So hoping to sort of continue that up in Newcastle. And again, like, a team, there are teams probably towards the lower end of the league, but pretty exciting with the new coaches coming in. Alex, I knew him from when I was younger, and a lot of new players coming in that, sort of almost starting a bit of a new project there. So really looking forward to it.
Wish you the very best of luck, Hugh. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers, Ger. Thank you.
It's Hugh O'Sullivan, who latterly was playing for London Irish, who now, of course, unfortunately don't really exist in the same format anymore. It's 8:41 this morning. Don't miss all the action in Rugby Daily today in your OTB podcast network. It brings you everything you need to know about rugby. It's all in partnership with Deliveroo. Deliveroo has some great bundles and deals. Open the app, make your choice, and watch your rider come to you. Deliveroo. Food. We get it. John Duggan is here. John, good morning to you.
Ger and Shane, how are we doing?
All good, John. How are things?
Good. What an extraordinary 48 hours for golf. It's like the Saudis said a few years ago. They went to the PGA Tour and said, look, we'd like to play a round of golf at your club, and can we have some lunch? And they said, no, we don't like you. You don't get in. And then a few years later they come, oh, by the way, we just bought your club. And you can run it, but we bought it, and we like that guy Rory McIlroy. Can he play in our club in Saudi Arabia and play around with us? We'd love to play around with Rory.
That's that show Undercover Boss. You know that show Undercover Boss, so they just come in and watch things, like, with a little bit of interest and get the tentacles in there, and all of a sudden take off the mask. Like, oh, by the way, I own this joint.
Yes,
I'm the boss. There's a bit of a feel of that to it. I don't know if you have a take on Rory McIlroy's take.
Well, Rory's one of the most compelling sports stars in the world, and if you saw the Bryson DeChambeau car crash of an interview, You can just see.
I didn't see Bryson's. Bryson was. I saw a headline. They're trying to make the world a better place. They're trying to be better allies. We're being better allies with them and our cash.
And Rory was candid. There's just no filter, and it's brilliant from a media point of view. How are they going to square this off? Because if the game is going to be unified now, that means, and if it's the same money, then how could you say that Brooks Koepka can't come back in and play?
You can't. That's all. That was all angry, reactionary nonsense. They're all playing next. Sorry, maybe not this year, right? Because they're still.
It'll be next year. But how then do you square it off that Phil Mickelson's like a cartoon villain now in his armchair, laughing maniacally that he's won this, that he's won 200 million quid for what?
Yeah. Again, it's a good point, right? Did they get that money in one go in cash to their bank, or was that like, we're going to give you 200 million over the next 10 years?
I think it's staggered.
And so in which case they continue to get the money, but
there has to be some kind of loyalty square off here, because Scotty Scheffler, John Ram, Rory McIlroy, Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele, Victor Hovland, all the top players in the world
said no.
They've all been played like chumps here. They've all been shafted by their boss. So there has to be some kind of, and then you got all the regular tour pros, and they all drank the Kool-Aid of which was, and I actually agree with it, and Rory said it yesterday, that sport is about competition, it's about legacy, it's about growing the game. But if they'd only just taken the Saudi investment 4 years ago, you wouldn't have had this Trojan horse of Liv. I think Liv will be gone next year. I can't see, once again, if you were meant to have an entente cordiale between the likes of Brooks Koepka, Rory, and having all the best players playing, and having Rory playing in Saudi Arabia, you can't have this city format that is Liv. So Liv will effectively be subsumed, I think, into a team format, a more global hue of the game, and it being legitimised in places like Saudi Arabia. But it's just the money thing just makes me laugh. Like, I had a text from a mate who's been very successful in his financial life, and he just says, legends, these Liv lads are legends, because they've just gambled and just made over 100 million in the case of Smith, Koepka and Mickelson. How do you square that off? Like that's because if you can square that off, then it's all sorted, isn't it?
I guess the other thing is that maybe those contracts were with Liv, they weren't with the Saudi investment fund, and so Liv will be wound up, and in the contract there's a break clause, and maybe they don't get all the money. Do you know, there's loads of, I think that we know very few of the actual nuances and the details of what's going to happen next. What we do know is that the bones of a deal are being done and worked out. It doesn't feel like they've finished working out. Like,
this is very early stages. It's a framework agreement. Like, what's going to happen? Are the Department of Justice and State's going to get involved from an antitrust point of view? What's the political temperature? There's some Democratic senators that have already expressed their misgivings, especially in solidarity with 9/11 families. Will Donald Trump, who has got a very cosy relationship with Saudi Arabia, be hosting some of these tournaments? How will the players feel about that? So there's a lot of things to unpick here. Greg Norman himself, what happened? Like, this year's Ryder Cup is gone, but you can't see Rory McIlroy sharing a team room anytime soon with Sergio Garcia.
It would be tricky.
Yeah.
Stranger things have happened.
Well, look,
they could hug it out,
that's a lot of hugging.
Are they doing another episode or season of the Netflix show?
They are, yeah.
So they're currently filming.
Apparently they.
Lads.
I was reading in the Telegraph today, like on a supplement, the man who bought the world, Prophet Mohammed bin Salman, the 37-year-old de facto ruler of the Saudi kingdom. 1.3 trillion is the wealth of the royal family there. We know the Public Investment Fund is a 600 billion fund. They bought Newcastle. They're bringing Ronaldo and Benzema to Saudi Arabia. They bought 4 clubs in Saudi Arabia. They're trying to build a league there. Obviously, Formula 1 and boxing have gone. They've now bought a sport, which is golf. And I've been saying this over the last couple of years on this show. They're trying to have a hostile takeover of a sport, and that's exactly what's happened.
Not so hostile in a way in the end. But turned out loads of people wanted it.
It's hostile until it's not. It's hostile until
they see the money.
Yeah, and then everybody's okay, we can get into bed with this.
Jay Monaghan's less than hostile now,
including Rory, who says, this is going to ultimately in 10 years be good for the game if I separate myself. But you separate yourself, but you still take the Saudi cash, because there's no alternative. The money talks, and it's a degree of, as your favourite phrase, Ger, forget it, Rory, it's Chinatown. But another thing about it, another kind of a admission in all of this thing that the Saudis are doing, that oil is in the rear view mirror in terms of the future, fossil fuels, as countries move to solar, to wind, to other sources of renewable energy, nuclear possibly, and they're diversifying away from oil. And the sense is as well, they're trying to make Saudi Arabia a bit younger, a bit more like Dubai. and investing and trying to buy a popular culture around the world is a part of the legitimising this and making it more of a permissive society. The only problem is you got a judicial system that executes 81 people in a day. You got Washington Post journalists turning up at the Turkish consulate and being dismembered and killed. That's the kind of thing that people have a bit of an issue with.
Not good for the brand.
No, they've got stakes, Saudi Arabia, in Meta, Bank of America, Nintendo, Uber, and the Yasser Al-Rumayyan, who's the guy who's also the chair of Newcastle, who's going to be the chair of this new golf world professional entity. The sense of the article in Telegraph is he's obsessed with golf, and they've got the cash. And there's a degree of a seat at the table about this and a respect thing, that we want to see at the table, we want to be respected, and then if you allow us that, then we can let you run your golf tour globally, and we can all have a come-by moment.
I do think it'll be interesting to see what the relationship is like afterwards, if that's all that's required in this instance, and then something else is next and something else is next. I mean, you have to assume that there are similar portfolios being built up in real estate and in other corporations that the shareholding is too small for them at the moment to have to register, but you've listed off the major companies that they own massive stakes in, that everybody uses in day-to-day life. If you use WhatsApp, you're helping to support the Saudi investment fund, you know.
Also, they've won this now. I'm just fascinated, by the way, just on a tangent, see how Rory plays at the US Open in a couple of weeks. But they've won this now. The next thing will be the World Cup in 2030. That'll be the next thing to win. We know that Infantino lives in the Gulf. He's got a nice relationship with MBS. Do they win that? Do they win the Olympics?
I didn't realise he lives in the Gulf, does he?
Yeah. It's just the power of money.
Well, if they give the 2030 World Cup 100 years after Uruguay won it,
I read Miguel Delaney saying that there's this kind of talk out there that, because Miguel writes so well about all this stuff, that Uruguay might get the opening game. The rest of it will be held in Saudi, Greece and Egypt.
Fly everyone else to Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's just bonkers. Jim Monaghan, like, Rory name checked him obviously yesterday, but his comments and the turnaboutery that he has performed here, like, is his job in question? Is probably not, like, realistically, but it should be. He was referencing 9/11 last year, and all of a sudden now he's like, oh, these guys are actually great.
But the person who'd be firing him would be the guy he's just in the deal with.
Yeah, the realpolitik of it is that they need Monaghan now. Monaghan is part of this.
He's the human shield.
The syrup is that the players on the PGA Tour, of course, they don't.
And he's really useful for them now for the next period of time, because he'll take all the at a personal level, everybody will attack him, kind of going and that's where the anger, the blister of the anger pops on him. And everybody's like, well, there's nothing we can do about this now. Cause, there was an interesting point Rex Hoggard was making about the fans stopping the Super League. Golf fans probably don't care enough about this, do they? Like American golf fans, who are ultimately the only ones who could have any influence, but they're not going to be digging up fairways at golf courses. They're not going to be bursting in and stopping a tournament from happening the way they did Man United Liverpool. Like, that's just not going to happen.
They're not going to care about they're not going to care about the Saudi money, where the money's coming from. Like, you've already had a DP World Tour, and DP World have also had questions to answer in the past. People just want to see good sport. They want to see competitive sport. My whole issue with all of this has been, like, I mean, this relationship with the Saudi Arabian government and this government's relationship with the Saudi, like the Saudi Cup horse race and all these kind of things. My issue always was with this, that they were disrupting a sport and the competitiveness of a sport.
Is Irish racing not massively indebted historically to Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabian money?
Yeah, but it's more. It's the Arab world more so that they've got this huge relationship with. Like, once again, in an idyllic unicorn universe, would you be doing business with everybody in the world? No. You'd be able to pick and choose who you do business with, and I think in the case of the issue always with this for me was that the people who went to Live and the actors in Live, and they were disruptors of what a sport should be, which is about competition and about the best against the best. And maybe that's a completely naive view. Actually, what this will do is actually it'll bring it back to what the sport should be. It's just maybe that the money backbone in it is very unsavoury in a way.
I'm interested to see what happens to Greg Norman now. I know he was
I think he's gone. He's a goner.
He was just a figurehead, really, wasn't he, the last year?
He was very good at his job, which has been a disruptor that people didn't like.
That Homer Simpson meme of him fading into the bush, I think that's Greg Norman now. He'll just fade into the...
And his dream was to have a world tour 30 years ago. Once again, a bit like the Saudis, he was said, no, you don't have a seat at the table. And it's amazing what resentment can do in terms of driving people to get the outcome they want.
All right, JD, we'll leave it there. Good stuff.
All right, lads.
More from John, of course, on Saturday afternoon on Off the Ball on News Talk. Now, at 8:53, I'm delighted to say we have Andy Friend with us on the line to talk to us about his time at Connacht. Andy, you're somewhere in the mainland of Europe at the moment.
Yes, mate. We're in, I'll try and get it right, Saint-Mère-Église in Normandy. Landed in at Cherbourg yesterday, so making our way north as we speak.
How long are your travels going to take you?
Just shy of 6 months. We're back in Ireland near the end of November. Sell the motorhome, and then we'll fly home to Australia and see the family.
So it's ultimately the trip of a lifetime, a reward for time well spent in Connacht, I suspect.
Listen, we think so, mate. It's probably time well spent for the last 29 years on the professional coaching circuit. So I'll be honest, we've only had it in our plans for the last probably 3 years, but you very rarely get that or this time where you can just go and enjoy each other's company. That's my wife and I, and we know we're heading home to family, which is beautiful. So we'll enjoy these next 6 months.
6 months of driving around. Have you got anything specific on your itinerary, or are you just going to let you see where the open road takes you?
We'll follow our nose for most of it, mate. We've got a few good friends around Europe. Good mate in Dusseldorf, good mate in Munich, friends up in Italy, friends over in Switzerland, friends in France. So, and we will get to the World Cup for a couple of games, or certainly be in some towns for a couple of games. Diewold Senekal, who was our forward coach at Connacht, he's over in Oigne with his wife and daughter now, so we'll definitely drop in and see them. So yeah, we got a few little spots to stop, but the rest of the time it'll just be follow the nose and see what takes our fancy.
Is this the moment where you start to reflect on your time at Connacht, or had you begun to do that anyway as it was coming to an end?
I had started to do that. One of the things I love about Irish Rugby Union, they do support us as coaches, and IRFU have a fella by the name of Darragh Sheridan, who's actually a Galway-based fella, but he's a high-performance coach support, and Darragh's been really good to give me some time and to allow me to reflect upon the time that I had there. So he coordinated an exercise where we got feedback from 5 significant people, and he and I spent a good chunk of time over the last week or so going through that, giving me some feedback, because as a head coach you often don't get a lot of feedback, but it was great to get that feedback and gives me something now to be pondering and thinking upon these next 6 months as we're on this break, but allows me also then to prepare for potentially life after Connacht when we get back to Australia. I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but so I've done a bit of reflection, but I'm sure we'll do a little bit more over the next 6 months.
And what's the overriding emotion, Andy? Like, is it relief? It's, that your 5 years is over, you can relax now away from the game. Is it a bit of sadness, or is it a mixture?
It's definitely a mixture. There's no relief. It's probably a sadness that we've left Galway and so many friendly people, and a club that I think I fell in love with the club and will always have a love affair with Connacht Rugby now. There's an element of contentedness. I feel like we've come in and we've done the job that we were asked to do, and I believe we're leaving the club in a good spot. I think Pete Wilkins is going to be a great appointment, and he's got a really healthy coaching team around him. I think the squad where it is at the minute is in a healthy spot. I know Willie Ruan as the CEO and his board, they've got great plans ahead, with new stadiums and new centre of excellence and so on and so forth. So I just feel like the club's in a great position. So there's an element of contentness around that, but definitely an element of sadness leaving some really special people and a really special job.
In terms of the feedback that you were getting, I don't know how happy or otherwise you are to talk any more about it, but it's difficult for people to take feedback. It turns out we're not good as humans listening to somebody say, I really like the way you do this, but what about the way you do this? Could you do it slightly better? What's that like for you at this stage of your career? I nearly said the end there, Andy, I'm sorry, but at the end of this particular section of your career, what's that like for you? Because it can be difficult to listen to sometimes.
I actually really enjoy it, weirdly, because so the way we did it was a pretty stock standard stop start keep, it's called. So what do you need to stop doing, what do you need to start doing, and what do you need to keep doing? And I had feedback in all three areas. There was a lot in the keep section, which was always a positive thing. So keep doing this works for you, friend. And a lot of that stuff I knew anyway. Some of the stop stuff, most of that I knew anyway, because I am aware of some blind spots that I have, and I am aware of some failings that I have, as we all have. There was a couple there that went, oh, geez, I probably need to be a bit smarter on that. And then on the start, there was some really interesting stuff there. And one of the reasons that they probably came more as a surprise, because people look a little bit more outside of the box at your skill set and what you can offer. So there's a few suggestions there, and why don't you start doing this? And I thought, that's handy too. So it was really good feedback. I agree with you. I think as humans we don't like receiving negative feedback in particular, but at the same time you've got to get that, because we all have failings, we all have blind spots. We all need areas to work on, and we need people who we respect and who we trust who can give us that feedback. And so for me, I was really appreciative of the feedback and really glad to get it, to be honest with you.
Do you think your role changed from the time that you arrived to the time when you finished? That this is a question. Was there less coaching at the end than there was at the start, because you kind of hadn't instilled systems, and at the end it was more about trying to create or tend to the culture that you had created more accurately?
Yeah, most definitely, mate. I didn't do any on-field coaching in the last 12 months and did minimal in the 12 months prior. And so, when I came in, yes, there was a lot more on-field coaching and hands-on stuff, but that definitely faded out, which, when I took on that last 2 years, that was a definite plan, which is why, in that last year, my title became Director of Rugby, because it said two things to myself and the players, and to Pete Wilkins in particular, and to our supporters. Number one, Friendy's taken a step away from the on-field stuff, because we had Pete, we had Carly Tucker, we had Mossy Lawler, Dearvelt Senecal, 4 really good coaches. So let them go and coach. And the second thing was just to open up that space for Pete, who had the title then as a head coach, and gave the players more certainty around, well, who's actually leading this program at the minute. I was leading the program in terms of the butt stops with me, but Pete was doing all the on-field stuff. So it was really important to give him that title. But definitely my role changed over the last 5 years, as it has done over the last 29 years. I started as a skills coach, where you're so ingrained in the nitty-gritty of a halfback's pass, or a line-out thrower's throw, or a kicker's kick. Whereas you come through the coaching ranks, you just take a broader view of the whole game, and you get to where I'm at the moment. I'm not on-field coaching. It's a more broader strategic view of the whole program. So it's been a nice adjustment, to be honest with you.
Wonder, Andy, do you have any start, stop, keep bits of advice for Irish rugby now that you're leaving us? Like, is it and I know Dan McFarland had the comments during the season about the demographics favouring Leinster, and you have a playing budget that's I think half of Munster and Ulster and far less of Leinster. So what are your takeaways in terms of Irish rugby and the state of Irish rugby as it is currently, I guess?
I think it's in a great position, number one in the world at the minute. You've got Munster winning the URC. You had Leinster reaching the second final in a row of Champions Cup. I was really disappointed for Leinster and for Leo in particular around that Champions Cup, because I just thought, they put so much energy into that. So you look at, Connacht made the semi-finals. Ulster's been up there and thereabouts for the last 4 or 5 seasons. So I think all 4 provinces now are really pulling their weight, which is adding to the success of the national team. And I think the job that Andy Farrell and his coaches are doing is fantastic. So, you got the women into the Olympics for the sevens. The men are trying to qualify there, but they're now a foundation team on the world circuit. So there's a lot of good things going on. Under 20s undefeated for the last 2 seasons. So plenty of good stuff going on there. So I think it's in a healthy state, to be honest with you. There'll always be stop starts and keeps. I think the most important keep at the moment is keep all 4 provinces engaged, keep building the game on all aspects. I believe. I think that there's definitely a space for women's rugby and for sevens rugby and for 15s. Participation-based sport, professional-based sport. It's a tremendous game, and the more we can just push people playing the game, get involved in the game, the better it is for us all. So I think it's in a healthy spot, mate. There will be no doubt some stops and some starts. Dave Nucifora has asked me to give him a call on that over the next few weeks. So until I have that call with him, I'll probably keep my counsel dry on that.
Fair enough. Obviously, I'm sure that conversation will be really fascinating because you've got embedded in the culture and you've seen it develop and evolve, and the plans for the future. With that in mind, and looking at your own journey from skills coach to director of rugby, and this is probably a question you're being asked quite a bit over the next while in the camper van, what do you want to do next?
Yeah, and that's the great unknown at the moment. I think, I've loved this last year in supporting other coaches, and I think as a coach who's come through over the last couple of decades, there's not a lot of support there for coaches, and as we see at the moment, with social media and a greater spotlight on what we all do, there's more and more pressure building, and I fear for the game if we keep putting this pressure on new coaches, young coaches, and we don't give them support around them to tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, listen, what you're doing is fine, mate. You just lost a few games. Get back to process. Get back to what you're doing. Because I can promise you, when you're in that washing machine, you don't necessarily see the right things, and you do lose. You have doubt around, do I actually know what I'm doing? So I think the coaches need that, and I've really enjoyed being that bloke. Do I want to coach again? I'm not going to say no to that, but I probably want to get off the treadmill of club coaching, which is week in, week out, 40 weeks of the year. That's tough. It's tough. I've loved it, but it's tough on my family, and that to me at the moment is a big thing I need to focus on now. I need to give back to my wife, who we've had a great 5 years in Galway together, but we've had 5 years away from our 2 boys, and prior to that I'd had another 6 years away from the 2 boys. I've had the last 11 years away from the 2 sons. They're not getting any younger. I need to spend time with them, so the club coaching won't allow me to do that. Potentially being a consultant where I'm supporting other coaches and supporting programs, I could do that. I could do both. I could share my experience, and I could also, be there for my boys, which would be really important to me. So, but in all honesty, I have no idea what that's going to look like in 6 to 7 or 8 months' time.
How difficult has that been, Andy, being away from the boys? Because even a lot of people spoke about people culture, and Ronan O'Gara has been the person that's brought that into La Rochelle. You've done the exact same with Connacht from the very outset, making sure the families were heavily involved. So what was that like for such a long duration of time, being away from the 2 boys? It must have been a difficult thing. It's something that people looking from the outside in, I guess, don't really consider or think about.
Yeah, it's tricky. I'm not the only bloke, and we're not the only people that have time away from their kids. But the bit that got me was probably about a year ago, 13, 14 months ago, where so it's just before we've got a granddaughter now. It was about 2 months before she was born, and my son and his girlfriend put up a photo of them together with another couple, and I said to Kez, I saw the photo, I said, geez, that's a lovely photo. I said, no, that's Fee, isn't it? Is her name Fee? There was the other woman in the photo. She said, yeah. I said, who's the bloke with him? She said, Freddie, that's Ando, that's one of Jacko's best mates. And I'm like, right. Oh, that's like I shouldn't not know that. I shouldn't not know that young man there is best mates with my son, and I shouldn't have had to guess around who's that woman there. And that made me go, we've got a great relationship with our two boys, because we see, we're in contact, and that's one of the beauties of social media, or with the modern era where you can stay in touch. But I don't know the nitty-gritty of what those fellas are doing. And that's the bit that made me go, this has got to stop. I've got to get home, and I've got to, learn a little bit more about their mates and what they do. And we play a lot of games, we play a lot of cards, we play a lot of backgammon, different board games. Just spend that time just being with them, whether it's sitting around a fire, whether it's out camping or whatever it is we're doing. I just haven't done that, and they're the things you miss. So they are tough, mate, because that's what's really important to us as a family, and they're the things that unfortunately we've sacrificed to do what we do. But we knew we were doing it, but now we know we need to get back to it, so we're going to head back and do that.
I'm right in saying one of your sons is totally and utterly responsible for recruiting Mac Hansen, though, at the same time.
It's a great story, that, isn't it? Listen, he will claim 100% responsibility, and he definitely had some input, because I didn't realise he knew Mac. But when I asked him the question, do you know Mac? He said, yeah, I do, and he was able to give me some insights as to what it was. But no, he wasn't 100% responsible. We actually have a very healthy, strong recruitment plan at Connacht Rugby, probably the best I've ever seen, to be honest with you, where Tim Allnut runs that as our head of operations. The head coach is always involved. Willie Ruan, as our CEO, takes a massive involvement in it, and we've got our analysts flood through a heap of numbers for us and names for us, so it's a really comprehensive thing. I think the way that came out, it sounded like we'd fallen over Mac Hansen, and we tripped up on him because my son had said, this bloke can play footy, Dad. But no, it was a bit more to it than that, but he definitely gave me some insights as to who Mac Hansen was off the footy field prior to us signing him.
And does Mac have an Andy Friend tattoo yet?
No, I don't believe so. I did hear someone tell me the other day it was in a part of his body that we probably can't talk about. But no, I don't believe he does, mate. If he had it, I didn't want to see it anyway. He was good enough to come to me just before we drove out of the sports ground the other day to say, have a look at my new tat. And he showed it to me. I honestly thought it was Michael Checker. I said, what do you got Michael Checker on your leg for? And he said, it's Faz. I went, oh, of course it is. I can see that now. But it actually confused the hell out of me when he showed me. But listen, he's one of life's characters, mate, and he'd made a promise that if they won the Grand Slam, he'd get Faz on his quad. And a man true to his word, he's gone and done it. But he'll end up with a body full of different faces, I don't know there.
Andy, enjoy the next 6 months, whatever they bring, and wherever you go next. I think the people, anytime we've had you on, will understand the authenticity and the story you told about missing your kids. I don't think anybody will begrudge you heading home, but there's going to be a legacy to your time in Connacht that's very clear, that anybody who's dealt with you from the media side, I can only imagine what it must have been like to play for you. And I remember you came to an OB that we were doing in Galway in race week, and everybody after was like, wow, I want to play rugby for him, and we weren't very good rugby players. So there's definitely going to be a long lasting legacy to your time in Connacht, and so enjoy whatever comes next.
No, good on you fellas. Appreciate your support since I've been there, and long may that continue for the club. It's a tremendous club. There's so many good people there, and it's on the way up, and that's probably the thing that I'm most proud of is, we've kept it on that upward trajectory, and I've no doubt that Pete and the playing squad and Willie will continue to take that, and all the staff continue to take that onward trajectory going forward. So I'm going to watch from afar. I'll always be a Connacht fan and an Irish rugby fan now. So I thank you for your time and your support of rugby in the game. It's been brilliant.
Best of luck, Andy. Cheers. Thanks a million.
Good on you, fellas. Cheers.
It's 11 minutes past 9. OTB AM live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night edition is available now. Time for the cash machine.
Off the balls cash machine.
Right, May was an absolutely huge month for the cash machine. 15 lucky winners and some life-changing amounts of cash. Frank in Dublin won 50 grand, Mick in Wexford won 75 grand, and Liz also in Wexford won an incredible 81,000 euro. So the winning is showing no signs of slowing down. This week somebody could win a cool 60,000 euro heading into summer. It's easy to take part. I'm about to give you an amount. You take note of it, enter, and if we call you and you give us the number, you win the cash. This week on the cash machine, we're giving away a very easy number to remember. It's €60,000. To enter, text OTB to 57557. If it's you that we call back after 3 o'clock on Friday the 9th of June, answer your phone within 5 rings and tell us the prize amount and you win the money. So text OTB to 57557. Cost us $2.50 plus your standard message rate to play. You have to be over 18. You're playing across the Go Loud network of stations. Full terms are on our website at offtheball.com. Make sure you get your entry in by 3 o'clock on Friday the 9th of June, when we could be calling you. Answer within 5 rings, tell us the prize amount, and the cash is yours, €60,000. Text OTB to 57557. We're back after these with the Antrim football manager, Andy McEntee.
Off the Ball's cash machine.
What were your emotions at full time in Cape Town?
Unbelievable. It just pride, really. I was just incredibly proud of the lads, and it means so much just to win as a Munster coach, as a player as well. It just means a lot, to represent where you're from. And I just thought the boys were fantastic. Yeah. I thought we won the game. We hammered them by 5 points.
Hammered them. It was a 5-point win is the absolute worst you could have come away with.
Yeah, and I just thought we played really well and so brave. And we spoke about being brave all week, about calmness and about our poker face under the sort of what would be the word, being the antagonistic nature of some of their players, and how we dealt with that, and the crowd, 50,000 of them versus 5,000 of our fans. A real cauldron, it really was. I've been to the biggest stadiums in the world and played in front of some partisan fans, but these guys, it was a circus, as one of our members said, or one of our coaches said. It was an absolute circus, and we dealt really well with that. We were calm, we were poker face, we were brave, we looked to play, we made mistakes, we had tries cancelled out, we didn't get the rub of the green maybe once or twice around certain decisions. Just stayed going, and 4 minutes from time we come up with the big play and eventually cracked them, and it was hugely special in the way we won it. And that's why I was probably incredibly proud of the lads. There was a number of reasons why maybe you could tap out. We just didn't tap out. We stayed going. And even at the end, we come up with a massive play in the maul from the boys there, just, holding them up and making that a scrum and not allowing them to have phases where they're so dangerous. Yeah. That was huge. And to win it like that was special.
You're listening
to OTB AM.
Toe pocket goal! Ahead of this summer's football in Australia, we're going to Australia.
It's what dreams are made of.
We'll be hosting a night of celebration for the Republic of Ireland women's national team in partnership with Sky, and it's coming your way on June 28th in the Mansion House in Dublin. What a moment for the Republic of Ireland. We'll be joined by the full squad.
I don't know what we've just done. I did believe we could do it.
As well as some other great guests as we give the team a night to remember. Emma Byrne is in tears.
I can't believe it. We finally done it.
Tune in to all of Off the Ball's channels for a chance to win tickets to this exclusive event.
Sky, proud primary partners of the Republic of Ireland women's national team.
Outbelieve together, and we can go anywhere.
They are going to the World Cup Finals.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
So before the ads there, you heard Dennis Leamy chatting on last night's show with Joe about what winning the URC meant for Munster. You can catch that on the OTB Podcast Network alongside Football Daily and the F1 pod starring Shane Hannon. I'm delighted to say Andy McEntee is with us. Andy, good morning to you. How are you?
Oh, good lads, yeah. How are you guys?
Shane was making the point it's a slightly shorter journey from Dunboyne to Dublin than it is to training in Antrim. But then I passed the M50 and there's like the big sign for the Titanic, 90 minutes from here. I'm like, that's not too bad.
It can often take me 90 minutes to get in here, so it can. Okay. So, I mean, and it's a good road, so it's not the worst journey in the world.
You've got a slightly down week this week in terms of there's no game for you at the weekend, and you get to sit and watch potential opponents knock lumps out of each other. So time to take stock from the campaign so far. It's been fairly incredible for you guys from the Tailteann Cup perspective.
Yeah, well, I mean, incredible is probably a bit strong, but I mean, it's been decent. Yeah, the important thing I think for a team at our stage of development is getting games and getting games that you can be competitive in. So it's worked out nicely. Getting a little bit of momentum behind us is important.
We would have spoken before when you were Meath manager about the fact that you would get beaten in Leinster by Dublin, and then you'd go through the qualifiers, and the lessons that you were learning and absorbing would be over, while all the rest of the teams in the country who were slightly better than you were getting weeks of good warm weather training and the opportunity to embed plans for the next season. So you were starting next season at a handicap for being knocked out this season.
Yeah, the gap was always getting a little bit bigger, unless you got a good run in the qualifiers. But I mean, you're trying to we found we were trying to close the gap on Dublin as it was pretty much all the time, and yet they were getting to work together for an extra couple of months and getting extra games and extra training, and our season comes to a sudden end, and you're finding yourself a little bit further behind nearly every year.
So what's your instinct about the arguments that we're seeing? The Sam Maguire is too long and convoluted to get 12 teams into 16, and Tailteann Cup is less convoluted, I guess, because more teams go out. But it seems to me it's kind of missing the point of trying to level the playing field for counties.
Yeah, I think it is. Certainly it is for the Tailteann Cup. No, there's only one less team going out in the Tailteann Cup because of New York's involvement. But for teams, in Divisions 3 and Divisions 4, you need to be together. You need to be staying together, and you need to get games. You need to get a bit of momentum if you want to make progress. So I think people are missing the point a little bit. I mean, I get what they're saying. You have all these games just to eliminate 3 or 4 teams. But if you want to see inter-county, if you want to see the best players playing on a regular basis, you got to provide a platform for them. Now, I've long complained about the provincial structure. I mean, I think the answer to a lot of people's problems is, you have a senior and you have an intermediate championship, and you have Divisions 1 and 2 playing the senior, and Divisions 3 and 4 playing the intermediate. So 16 and 16, and it's
almost like the numbers work out.
Almost. I mean, if you thought long and hard about it, you might think
if you were to design numbers for a system, this would kind of be perfect.
Yeah.
Although GA missing the trick with the calendar, and in terms of you look at July and August, especially when the All-Ireland final is a little bit earlier, I guess you've got an opportunity there where you're not competing against soccer and rugby, and there's a gap there where maybe the GA could lean into.
I mean, I think, again, I've had this conversation, I think, with you guys before as well. I mean, I think we are missing it. I think GA are missing a trick. I mean, we've offered up prime time to and as you say, when rugby and soccer are at their lowest, and we have a captive audience, and we're not getting to see the best players in the country playing the games that we want to see them play. So there's a big rush. I mean, we end up playing National League games in end of January, February, when it's too bloody cold to go and see them, and arguably some of the consequences of not performing in the league are dire in some places, and the most important games of the year can often be played in February and March, when realistically they should be played in the summer.
Yeah. And so now you've been through the experience of the Tailteann Cup group stages and a league campaign with Antrim. The inconsistency in the team in the league seems to have been worked out by the time you got to the summer. Maybe it hasn't all been worked out, but certainly you made big strides.
Yeah. I mean, some of the inconsistencies. I mean, we from the highs of beating Cavan to the lows of not showing up against Westmeath, and I suppose that can happen any team. But the games that really probably hurt us more in the league were the last minute defeat to Down and to Fermanagh, and had we have I suppose just goes to show how tight every division is in the league. Had we have come through those 2 games, you begin into the last game playing for promotion. So you'd like to think that we've ironed out some of the problems, and I suppose last weekend we were kind of turned the tables a little bit on Fermanagh, in that we were the ones who came from behind and got a couple of late scores.
In previous seasons, and not to labour the point here, but like Antrim would have potentially gone out against one of the Division 1 teams in the first round of Ulster and then into the qualifiers, whereas now next season you're starting the season from an equal footing from all the other teams in Division 3 at least, depending on how many more games you get in the Tailteann Cup, and it could be as many as 3, and so you're just starting off a much better base and everybody has confidence because you've played in summertime, and it's a nicer thing to do, I suspect, for young men to get some reward for spending all the bleak midwinter training sessions to actually play in sunshine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the ratio, people would have said the ratio of training to games has always been a little bit skewed, you know, when you think about it, and there is a bit of payback for guys who put in a lot of long hard hours, you know, in bad weather conditions and doing all the things that they're asked to do. Same for every county, but you know, the prospect of us, you know, the prize for getting a result in the next game is getting into Croke Park, and for a group like the Antrim fellas, I think that'd be huge. Certainly a big motivating factor.
What was the target at the outset of the Tailteann Cup, Andy? Because you see even the goals that you're buying in the 3 group games, like, it's consistent. It might sound like a stupid question, but was the target to win the Tailteann Cup? Was it to get to a certain level? Was it just to improve the style of play, or what was the focus?
Well, I think no more than the league, I think every team in the Tailteann Cup could stand back and make a case for themselves for being reasonably successful. Now, you know, how far that goes, nobody can really tell. But yeah, we looked at it as I certainly looked at it, and the players, in all fairness to them, absolutely bought into this. We looked at this as a competition that we can be competitive in, and with a favourable wind, you know, you could go reasonably far in it.
Presume a final against Meath is the ultimate. Would you rather avoid that, or would you absolutely embrace it?
Oh, I'd rather avoid it now, if at all possible, you know. But I guess it would mean that Meath would be winning, and it means we would be winning. So the downside of it would be a couple of weeks of discomfort, I guess.
Positives.
Yeah.
The style of play is something that I've heard a couple of the players talk about as well, and even just the focus, the added focus maybe since Enda McGinley left on strength and conditioning and fitness, and I know that seems to have been a focus, and clearly, you know, late in games it's paying off for Antrim as well, that focus.
Yeah, I think the lads have put in a lot of work, really. You know, in Robbie Bremner and Brendan Murphy, we have 2 really good guys. We have the facilities there, and I think the lads, you know, it is starting to pay off. You know, but I mean, that's one of the basic ingredients of the modern game, is you got to be physically able for it. I mean, last Sunday was tough going. So it was 25 degrees and very hard ground, and fortunately enough, we had enough guys still well able to make the runs late in the game.
The injuries have been something else, like when you see and the hard pitches don't help. Was it easier for you coming in a sense that I think Antrim lost a number of players from last year's panel, that whether it's to travel or whatever else, or maybe players just come to the end of their careers, but it's more of a clean slate maybe for you coming in from the previous tenure?
Yeah, there was a number of guys for various reasons, as you say, injuries, you know, just reached that stage in the career, one thing another. There was a lot of guys not involved this year that would have been involved last year, and still a number of fellas who are involved but unfortunately have had long-term injuries. You know, the lads of Paddy McAleer and Kevin Small, and unfortunately Ryan Murray now as well. They're long-term injuries, but they've been great fellas to have around the place, and have shown great interest and given great encouragement to a lot of the younger guys.
Antrim has big playing numbers and a huge population base, and obviously not everybody's interested in playing Gaelic football, but for those who are, there are still big numbers, and it always felt like there's the potential there for it to be a bit of a sleeping giant if they were to get the systems in place. Do you feel like some of those systems are beginning to bear fruit, or there's still work to do at that level too? I
think there's work to do. I think you can change body shapes because it's just kind of a straight line equation. The more you run, the better you get. Trying to change mindset is a little bit different, and I think we're starting to see a little bit of that with the lads. They're going out with an expectation that they can perform at this level and that they can succeed. But I think structures, underage structures, a lot of really good work being done up there, and it'll probably take a little while yet to bear fruit. The club scene is very competitive. And perhaps could do with a little bit of tweaking to maybe help the county scene, because there's always a little bit of I suppose, I wouldn't say friction, but there's always a little bit of a tug of war between club and county, and trying to maybe get a better balance for that, I think would help in the longer term.
Is that looking at something like they do in Monaghan, where they have the start games and all the county players are only available for the start games, but everybody else, and the games continue and everybody knows the story at the start of the year, something like that?
Yeah, something like that, and maybe not in so much of a rush to get leagues started. And maybe then the connection between league and championship, your status between in championship is in some places dependent on what division you're in the league. So in that regard, teams that provide more players for the county setup
aren't punished.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, that you can see why then players are like, you can't go to this game this weekend because we need you for this game, but it's just a random, it seems on the face of it to be a run-of-the-mill league game, but ultimately it might impact their ability to play senior championship.
Yeah, and everybody has to appreciate that. I mean, the club is very important to everyone.
You mentioned the heat there last week at the match, Andy, and I was in Clonus myself, and it was similar. I noticed even just there's water bottles being shared between players constantly. Kieran Donnelly had the Fermanagh manager interesting comments after the match where he was like, he thought it was outrageous that there wasn't something organised, reactionary almost, that players playing in that heat, that there could have been something. Maybe it's a small issue, of course, but these things can crop up.
I suppose it's difficult for both. I could see maybe from a referee's perspective, maybe he's been graded and there's somebody watching him, and there's no official allowance made for water breaks. Both Kieran and himself agreed that we'd go with water breaks if the referee was open to that, and could well be that perhaps he compromises himself by doing something like that. I don't really know, but
sometimes you just need a little bit of common sense.
Well, the problem with common sense is that
it's uncommon.
Usually, yeah.
And also, I totally take your point that it's really difficult. But some dictator, surely somebody in the organisation can say, okay, these are unparalleled weather conditions, and so therefore we've decided that everybody's allowed a water break. Maybe if you're playing the Limerick hurlers, you don't want to give them the water break because Connacht is such a genius.
Yeah, well, I suppose to give the referee his dues, he did say, well, look at it, if there's a natural break and play, get on the pitch here. You can get
right
now. Maybe
then if Antrim have scored 6 or 7 points on the trot, you don't want the break and play. Maybe
there you go. But I'd be very reasonable when it comes to things like that.
Very reasonable. How are you enjoying it?
Oh, I'm enjoying it. I mean, like anything else, like any other job, it has issues. I mean, there's always something to be dealt with. But
are you getting better at dealing with that stuff now? It's the second time around, like.
Yeah, I suppose it's also.
You're a bit tentative there.
I think no. I think I probably said this to you before, like when it was with Ballyboden, going back to Dunboyne and being able to leave it behind you makes it a little bit easier. And it's a little bit the same in Dunboyne. I come back to Dunboyne, and there is a little bit of an Antrim fan base growing in Dunboyne, but it's a member, a lot of close friends, so I can leave a lot of it. You can leave a lot of it behind. You're not surrounded by it all the time, and that probably makes it a little bit easier.
And is the experience that you had with Meath as useful as you hoped it would be when it comes to dealing with, or was a lot of it specific to Meath? Do you know what I mean? Like, are there just tenets of the job that you can go, okay, I've got this box off my head. I know when this issue arises, I'm going to be able to either outsource the problem or nip it in the bud quickly, and we can, or.
Yeah, I think a lot of the issues come up are individual. You got to deal with it. I mean, you do have. I mean, the club versus county thing is that's a common denominator everywhere, I'd say. I mean, look, you're learning all the time, So I mean, surely there's elements of my experience with me that I could bring with me and maybe benefit from up there. But in general, I'm very fortunate dealing with Donald Murphy as the treasurer and Ger McCavan as the chairman. I deal with two people, and that makes it an awful lot simpler.
Yeah.
Whereas in Meath, you're dealing with people in Trim and Navan and Ashburn walking down the street and Dunboyne. Everyone has their opinion, I guess, and 2 cents worth of thoughts on who should play, who should not play, and style to play.
For sure, yeah. And I'm sure it's the same up in Belfast, but I can't hear it from where I am. So I mean.
Andy, last one for you. At the moment, we can't work out who the best couple of teams in the country are for Sam Maguire. Do you have any inkling about who's going to do it at this stage?
Yeah, well, it's probably a little bit early. There's still a little bit of shadow boxing going on, I suppose, and no team has really grabbed it. Galway have had a couple of wins. I have a sneaking suspicion that Tyrone mightn't be too far off.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
In terms of that shadow boxing, right, how do you get them then to peak for the games when it really does matter? Like, is that about like being the emotion is dialed down a few percentage points for these games at the moment, and then you've got to dial that up for the knockout football?
Yeah, I'd say that's a possibility, but I don't think the shadow boxing is intentional. I just think there's no team playing particularly well on a consistent basis at the moment. Now the question is always, can you turn it on when you really need it? And I suppose that's where Dublin have been able to do that. They've been able to get through Leinster traditionally, quite easily. Same with Kerry. But Kerry haven't been able to turn it on, when they really needed it. I mean, I know they got across the line last year, but could very easily have not got across the line last year.
Yeah, Dublin nearly caught them, and then Galway nearly caught them.
Dublin nearly caught them, and a couple of late decisions made a big difference in that game against Galway. So I mean, I'm sure Galway. I mean, the two teams that I would think will probably be Galway and Tyrone.
Okay, and it's just in terms of the preparation for this year and the extended season, has it been straightforward to get your team to be as good as they can be for this period? Like, is that just an earlier in the year conversation with the physio and the strength and conditioning going, we need them to be super fit at this point, let's not kill them up until that point, but we need them to be peaking here and here?
No, I wouldn't have had that, because I mean the truth of the matter is, for us, survival in Division 3 was huge.
Right.
So you can't say, well, look, we'll try and gauge this and make sure we're in the right spot come Tailteann Cup, and that's what I was saying earlier. I mean, those games in the league are so important to your whole season.
Well, it would have defined your first year. You're getting relegated to Division 4, but then you do well in the Tailteann Cup. I was like, but we're playing Division 4 football next season.
Yeah, and very hard to turn around. I mean, if you find yourself in Division 4, there's every chance that the performances wouldn't be as good in the Tailteann Cup.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's probably it's different for teams in Division 1s, but even if they're in Division 2, like I know from a Meath perspective, your league performances weren't good enough to escape being in Tailteann Cup, and for a team, for a county like Meath with that tradition, that was huge. So they couldn't afford to be trying to sort of gauge it for championship,
which makes it a bit of a lottery now in the Tailteann Cup, and therefore really exciting and interesting.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I mean, we have a home game in Corrigan Park now on Saturday or Sunday week, and I'd like to think the place will be buzzing, because there are a lot of really good, genuine GAA people up there.
Yeah.
And if we could get that, the hurlers have certainly managed to get it, and I guess that has been the challenge that I put down to the fellas is, we got to capture their imagination just like the hurlers did.
Yeah, well, best of luck with it. Continued success. Thanks, Andy, for joining us today.
Not at all. Thanks.
Cheers, Andy.
Cheers, man.
Andy McEntee there. OTB AM live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Art Edition is available now. On tomorrow's programme, Graham Hunter previews the Champions League. Talks about Messi as well. Jenny Claffey on the tennis. David Sharkey. Plenty more. Right now, James O'Connor and Joe Quaid chat about the weekend's hurling. Have a great Thursday.
On to chat about the game on Sunday. Jamesy O'Connor of Clare is with us. Jamesy, how you doing?
Good, Joe. Good. Looking forward to it.
And Joe Quaid of Limerick. Great to talk to you again, Joe. You're welcome back.
How are you, folks?
We're very well. So we'll go down memory lane in a moment, but I think, Jamesy, we should touch on Teddy McCarthy and his very sad passing at the age of 57. You would say with absolute certainty we will not see his like again. First and only player to win All-Ireland titles in hurling and football in the same year with Cork in 1990. 4 All-Irelands total, 2 football, 2 hurling. Footballer of the year in 89. Condolences obviously to all concerned. Some of the photos of him leaping into the air, twice the height of anyone else around him, doing the rounds over the last 24 hours. He was some bit of stuff on a hurling and football pitch.
He was, yeah. I suppose I played minor for Clare in 89 and 90. Joe, I suppose, probably similar age to myself. So, at that age, obviously, he was, you're obviously well aware of what's going on. And he was, to win, obviously, the 2 All-Irelands in 2 weeks was an achievement that we're never likely to see repeated, Joe. So, yeah, I suppose, look at a sad day. I made my championship debut in 93, and I was actually looking back at the video that's the second half of the game to see if he actually played. So, I don't think he did. But what a player, what an athlete, and I suppose at 57, just our condolences to his family. It's sad that such a young man has passed away, and we're unlikely to see his like again.
It sure is desperately sad, and you can imagine the family must be going through an awful time at the moment. Joe, his name, I suppose, will now forever be iconic in GAA. He will always be the only man to win All-Irelands within 14 days of each other.
Yeah, I think I did similar to Jamesy there for the 94 match. I went back and looked and see where he was playing, and he tagged out 94 against us at wing forward. I think he was taken off at half time in the game, but I suppose you think back and to have shared a pitch with such an icon of the game, both hurling and football. I suppose as young fellas, Jamesy, we were probably out the back watching match, playing after watching All-Ireland finals and Munster finals, and any high ball that had come, there was only one person you wanted to be, and that was Teddy Mac. He was just a phenomenon. I think 5'9", that was able to leap probably to 10'9". He was just a phenomenal player, and to do what he did in the space of 2 weeks was unbelievable. I was actually down in college in Cork in 1990 for the 2 All-Irelands, and he was the main man, because to achieve that is just phenomenal, and condolences to his family, his friends, his teammates. I would never have probably spoken to Teddy, but it was like a death in the family, which it was. It's a death in the GAA family, and I think everybody feels it, no matter what county you're from. If you see one of your icons, your idols passing away at such a young age.
And you mentioned there, Joe, no better man to field the ball in the air at 5'9". So the photographs, because he's a bit before my time, the photographs I'm seeing where he does look to be extraordinarily high in the air, that was a hallmark of his play. That was something you didn't need photos to notice. He was doing that routinely.
No, you see him, Mac, and like Cork had some big lads. Kevin Hennessy, Tomas Mull would have been a tall, big man, but this guy, how he got up in the air, I think he was probably one of the first GAA stars to be known for hang time. They'd be on about Cristiano Ronaldo's hang time. The boys that are on about that, Joe, never saw Teddy Mac playing. Okay.
Well, again, condolences to all. Terribly sad news, and 57 is far too young to go. We will talk Limerick Clare at the weekend in due course, but let's go back to that period, 94, 95, 96, the last time this rivalry was really bubbling away in Munster finals in particular. So 1994, that was your debut season, Joe. Jamesy, you said you made your debut in 93, so this was on in Thurles. Limerick's first Munster title in 13 years. Mike Gilligan got 7 from play. Clare got 2 late goals, Jamesy, which puts a real sheen on the scoreboard, 25 points to 210 with 2 late goals from Clare. Ger Shane said of the game, they hammered the living daylights out of us that day.
Yeah, it's a video nasty, Joe. Listen, we actually beat Limerick in '93. It was my championship debut in the park in Ennis, and Neville cried off injured just before the game, and Sparrow came in as a late sub and hit 1-5 from playing, was man of the match. And I think that day, breaking from the parade, Mike Rail was playing centre forward for Limerick, minding his own business, and I think Dalo met him with the shoulder before. This is just breaking from the parade and putting him on the flat of his ass, which was kind of, I suppose, a declaration of our mentality on the day. You know, we had a terrible championship record. You know, Limerick, I think, had won the league that year, were certainly red hot favourites, probably had eyes and designs on winning the Munster Championship, but we ambushed them in Ennis and had a great win there. Subsequently beat Cork and then got annihilated by Tip in the Munster final. So 94 we beat Tip. Along the way got back, but Limerick were waiting for us, and obviously they had a bit of fire from the previous year. Look, they were a really good side, and we just didn't perform at all. We were probably maybe 4 or 5 points down at half time, but somebody in the dressing room, I think, said that we're not beaten yet. And I think we were beaten there and then, because we just needed someone to be positive, that, you know, and be upbeat, because we hadn't hurled. But, you know, it was, I suppose the opposite was the case, and they made a couple of changes, and they put Shawnee McMahon out from centre back on the wing, out on Mike Galligan. And you know, Shawnee, the one thing Shawnee doesn't have is pace, and they brought in, I think, Francis Corey, who was a cornerback by nature. He was captain of the Clare Miners in '89 at centre back, and I remember going on the pitch and seeing Francis be playing out of position, Shawnee out of position, and saying this doesn't look right, and it didn't end well. And you know, as the 2 late goals put a gloss on it, but Limerick just hammered us. And yeah, that was one of the low points certainly of my career, and from my perspective, probably worse than the mauling we got from Tip in '93, because expectations were higher. We'd beaten Tip and we had high hopes going down. Yeah. But Limerick just murdered us.
And one other thing, Jamesy, Ger Shane, as well as saying they hammered the living daylights out of Clare, he said physically they overpowered us. We couldn't cope fitness wise. They just played on a different pace to us. I remember looking out early on, and they were getting to every ball a yard ahead of our fellas, and I was thinking, we're really in trouble here. That was the message for Clare hurling. We weren't physically ready. And that really jumped out to me, because I would think of your teams, obviously, and the runs up the hill and this kind of manic fitness. So I'm wondering, was that Munster final in '94 at the hands of Limerick, was that like this eureka moment where Ger Shane said, right, I'm taking these boys to the torture chamber over the winter?
Yeah, there was probably an element to that in it. I mean, it was my last year in college, and no, we wouldn't have anything like the physical training done that year that we subsequently did, obviously, you know, under Mike Mack the following year. But, like, you know, Len Gaynor was manager, and, you know, Len did a huge amount in terms of, I suppose, look at restoring our pride and turning the thing around. And we had good young players coming through. I mean, I came into the team in '93 along with Brian Lohan. Shawnee came in '94, and Ger, you know, was in as a selector, and I suppose look at coach that year. And I think Len just realised how good a coach Lagnan was, and pretty much turned most of the hurling training over to him. But yeah, look, we didn't perform on the day, and we probably weren't good enough. And I think, look, at coming, you know, '95, you know, Frank Lohan came into the team, Baker came into the team, Stephen Mack, you know, Eamon Taff was on the panel, and, you know, all the players that were coming in were probably maybe better than the players that they were maybe replacing, and that was a process that took place, I suppose, over 2 or 3 years, you know. So we lost 2 Munster finals as well, Joe, '93 and '94. So '95, you know, obviously we were in great shape physically, but we probably had a better team. We were more experienced, and we had the unthinkable prospect that we couldn't lose 3 Munster finals in a row, and that certainly gave us an edge, you know, heading into that game against Limerick. And you know, I'd say Joe probably admitted as well that maybe Limerick haven't been so comfortably ahead of us in '94, maybe weren't expecting the challenge that they met in '95, and you know, we got the better of that day the way they had on us the previous year.
Joe, give us a word on '94 first of all. Your debut season, you'll end up with an All-Star. I know the Offaly game doesn't go to plan, but to win Munster title in your debut season, that's a beautiful day. What are your memories of it?
Yeah, it was phenomenal. I suppose the match against Cork was the real one. You're going in facing your old adversaries in Cork. We hadn't beaten them in 14 years, walking behind the band, pissing rain down. The last thing that a goalie wants on his debut is a wet ball. Walking behind the band for the first time at senior level, and you're wondering what in the name of God am I doing here? Then probably 15 minutes into the match, you've 2 goals conceded, and my late father, the Lord rest of him, a man standing up behind him, taking off his cap and saying, Jesus Christ, bring Tommy Quaid back. So anything after that, lads, was a huge bonus. So to beat Cork, it was the first time we beat him in 14 years. It was phenomenal. We kind of stumbled over the line against Waterford in the semi-final, and the day of the Munster final against Clare. Look, Clare and Limerick matches, as James will know, you don't need any motivation for them. I think we often play challenge matches in the Gaelic grounds, openings of fields and things like that, and especially James, he probably wouldn't have seen about playing in goals. There was as much action going on above in the terrace between the fans as there was out in the field. You could see rows breaking out everywhere. But definitely then 95, I remember sitting at home in the kitchen the Saturday night, and I think it was Clare FM or whatever the local radio station in Clare was that time. They had done interviews with the players, the Clare players. I think, Jamesy, I think you were one of them that was interviewed on it. And I listened to it, and there was just something different about the way the Clare boys were talking. And I remember Mike Galligan rang, and he said, I think we're okay for tomorrow, sure. And reference the year before, sure, we beat him handy last year. And I said to him, I said, there's just something not sitting right with me. I think these boys are ready to come and put up a performance against us. And I suppose, Jamesy, to be fair, we hammered G in 94, and what I would consider he gave us a fair trimming in 95. And a lot of it, I would definitely say, was down to complacency from us, one thing, and then just, I think, year preparation. I think Ger probably spotted, as you say, we were a bit aheady. We had Dave Mahidi in with us, had a super fit in 94. But in 95, he brought the training and the fitness to a completely different level. But I think it's remiss of people to say that Clare went on a run then from 94 up to 97 just because of their fitness. They're super teams down through the years. I think minor final, James, he beat us down in 99 or 89 down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. You know, yourself, Fitzy would have been playing in that. So I suppose out of the 2 squads, we were probably nearly the farm team of the 90s. When you look at it, Clare Munster final 93, we were there, and Clare 94, 95, 96 again. We were probably, both teams were at the top of the pecking order, but obviously it was knockout that time, so Clare were beaten, they were out. We won the league in 97, Clare won the All-Ireland in 97. We won't mention 98. You know, so like when you think of it, we were probably the farm teams. We definitely didn't bring home the silverware that we should have, but Clare did. And look, it's great to see it back again. The rivalry that's there, it's something different. It can get vicious at times with people, but I think there's good healthy banter as well at the same time.
Jamesy, I think I may have been doing Ger Loughnane a disservice then all these years. So Len Gaynor steps down post 94. Loughnane goes from selector to coach for 95. So you were saying there, Gaynor recognised that Loughnane was such a brilliant hurling coach that he gave Loughnane most of the coaching duties. I have to say, like, completely wrongly, it turns out I had just suspected from afar that Loughnane, probably because of his just like the charisma and the force of personality, that was his kind of unique MO. I never actually saw him as a, shorts and out in the grass pointing and blowing whistles kind of a coach.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, he was an unbelievable hurling coach, Joe. So he would come in as a selector with with Bishop Willie Walsh actually in '94. Bishop Willie had taught in Flanagan, and would have coached us. I think we won a Dean Ryan. Dale would have won All-Ireland colleges with him. And Willie was a great character, and he's a great character, still alive today. But Len would have done most of the hurling coaching in '93, and would have started that role in '94. But again, as I said, look, Ger was so good. He I think gradually just left more of it to Ger. But Ger came in, I think, and had some deal done with the county chairman. I think that he would take over as manager once Len left. So I mean, that was the political manoeuvring that had to go on behind the scenes, because Len was manager of the 21 team, Joe, in '92, and we lost famously. We won the Munster Minor in '89, beat Limerick and Joe, beat them in the 21 championship that year along the way as well. But we lost the famous 103-1 final to Waterford, I think by 2 points. They went on and won the All-Ireland, beat Offaly, Brian Whelan, Johnny Dooley, John Troy were all around that Offaly team. But Lagnan was shafted at the subsequent county board meeting, and we had a pretty good team the following year. And but he was gone as manager because it was a scandalous decision, and really pissed off, I'd say, the players. I mean, I was certainly furious that happened. So I suppose he had his homework done, and the political manoeuvrings that take place to get the senior job. He did what he had to do behind the scenes, and I don't know if I told you the story before, but after the '93 Munster final, he called into my parents in the business in Ennis, and I was upstairs, and he called into and asked the father where I was around or whatever, and he came upstairs, and he was sounding me out, about him, and I'd played well in the Munster final that year and all the rest of lost the tip, but I suppose he was, I suppose, trying to get my opinion on the coaching, and I was saying, listen, training was brilliant and setup was great and all the rest of it. But he was having the same conversation with Brian Lowe and maybe one or two other players, because he was a man testing the waters. He clearly, had a passion, felt he was the right man for the job, but knew that he'd maybe had to do what needed to be done behind the scenes to make sure he got it. So, came in '95, and obviously as manager brought Mike Mack, who was with him in '92 with the 21s, and obviously who coached the minors in 1989 and '90, and I suppose the rest was history. But unbelievable coach, Joe, innovative, 100 balls and sitters, training 100 miles an hour. So I mean, he over-egged, I think, the physical stuff, and look, there's no question about it. We had a huge amount of physical work done, but equally, I say strongly, was the role he had in speeding up our hurling and speeding up the training and the intensity of the training matches and the physicality of the training matches. That was all down to him, and you loved, once the clocks went back, you absolutely loved going to training with Lagnan, because it was so enjoyable, such variety, the pace, the tempo. He'd be in the middle of it, conducting the whole thing like a conductor of an orchestra, driving you on. You'd miss a ball, he'd suddenly spot it, and he'd kick you when you were down, and at the same time say the right thing, maybe to lift you up when you needed it as well. So phenomenal coach. And as I said, I just loved going to training with Lagnan.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's very different to the running up the hills misery that I thought you guys were enduring the whole time. I know there's a bit of that too, but I think you're right to point out Clare were about more than just fitness and physicality. Of that 95 final then, so Clare won 17, Limerick 11 points. Joe, what would be said from afar about that is Lagnan comes in, Clare win the league, they've lost 2 Munster finals in a row, they're in great physical shape, they're just going in the right direction, whereas Limerick were still coming to terms with the manner of the Offaly defeat in the All-Ireland final. So to what extent did you feel, as Limerick headed into 95 and that Munster final, was the Offaly defeat still hanging over the Limerick setup? Did it feel like a side which had the wind knocked out of them still?
I don't think so, Joe. I think probably the complacency of it. And look, Jamesy grew up through it. It was nearly a blot in your copybook if Clare beat you. Going back in the 80s and early 90s, I remember coming out, I was a sub in Ennis in 93, and we were wondering what's happening, like this Clare beating you. It's just not right. So, we probably had our eye on the ball way ahead of the Munster final to get back and right the wrongs of 94.
Right.
But to be fair to Clare, they give us some kick up the arse. Do you know what I mean?
Jamesy, did you know that Limerick held Clare in such high esteem all those years?
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, I think, Joe, it's I don't know if Joe remembers this, somebody left, I think the Fail was on in Limerick that year, maybe in 95, I'm not sure. But there was some kind of a failure program left in our dressing room. Maybe it might have been a week before the Munster final, right? And I think it was Clarkey, right? Dave Clark had been interviewed, and one of the questions was favourite opponents, Clare, because we always beat them. I remember shaking my head. And I mean, I backed Dave Clark against Limerick CBS. I backed him at minor at 20, 21, obviously at senior level. I mean, look, great character, great player for Limerick, and a player that was probably discarded by Limerick, you know, when he still, I felt, had a lot to offer. But that was Clarkey, and let's just say that was left in our dressing room probably for a reason. And I remember that certainly gave me fuel for the game. So yeah, Joe, we'd have always looked on Limerick as maybe looking down on us to an extent. So let's just say we had plenty of fuel heading into that Munster final. But to an extent, it wouldn't have mattered who it was.
Yeah.
Because for us, the prospect of losing 3 in a row was inconceivable. And whatever else, I remember going out at half time, like man saying no surrender. Whatever else, we weren't going to surrender and throw in the towel, and we'd go down with our boots on. And look, obviously, you know, we gave a great performance in the second half.
You scored 6 points, I should mention as well. Joe, what a lot of people will remember the 95 Munster Hurling final for is Davy Fitzgerald taking a penalty, which was very unusual. He says he'd never taken a penalty before. I think, was it Shawnee McMahon, James, he did his collarbone that year against Cork?
Yeah, Shawnee. Yeah, we were steep to get over Cork, to be honest, in the semi-final. That was a game where Shawnee broke his collarbone. But that championship was straight knockout, and that game went down to the wire. You know, obviously we had 3 subs on, I think, at the time. Shawnee broke his collarbone, was sent up corner forward rather than coming off because we didn't have a sub to bring on. He obviously helped force the line ball towards the end of the match that Fergie Toohey took, who'd probably never taken a line ball in his life, and Baker, who had no business been in the edge of the square, got on the end of it and put it into the net. But even at the end, Frank Lohan made an unbelievable block, I think, on Kevin Murray to deny Cork a goal that would have put us out. And I sometimes, Joe, dread to think what might have happened if we'd lost that game, given the way we trained. We'd have been gone, back to the drawing board again. So we were probably lucky to get over Cork that day, but at the same time then in a great place coming into the Munster final, under the radar, you know, probably Limerick raging hot favourites because they probably came through, you know, Tip and Waterford, I think, on the other side of the draw, and we were very much in the long grass way. Fair enough, yeah. But Shawnee, I mean, look at Shawnee, didn't even tell you, like, he went down, I think there might have been 3 or 4 weeks in the Munster final. He went down to Dr. Con Murphy in Cork on the Friday night before the game to do a inverted commas fitness test, which consists, I think, of Dr. Con asked him to do about 5 press-ups, of which Shawnee said he did about 3, right? And then Dr. Con hit him a couple of half shoulders and declared him fit, right? So that was the extent of the fitness test. But yeah, Shawnee took the field, and I think, I don't know, one of the Limerick players, I think maybe he might have rattled him with a fair shoulder early on, and Daly and Baker were in, but look at he was up to it and made a great recovery and obviously played well on the day. So that was probably a question mark and a doubt coming into the game because he was obviously such a key player for us.
Joe, what were your thoughts when the penalty was given and Davy Fitz starts trotting up from the other end of the field?
Well, I think that day I would have played against Fitzy. I don't believe that was the first penalty he hit.
Right.
I can guarantee you that. But Fitzy placed the ball with not right in the middle of the 21. He had placed it a bit to his right, to my left, so he'd get an angle so that he'd be able to hit it across me. And anyone that would be going to take a penalty, don't put it at the side. The goalkeeper has the hurley already. You got to make it go across, make him move the hurley across. And I think I can't remember who was reffing that, Janzi, but I was roaring at the ref to get him to put it in the middle, and I kept roaring, but he didn't. And subsequently, I think it was at the league the following year or something, he got a penalty in Limerick in the league match, and he came up to take it, and he tried the same again. Only this time I walked out, picked up the ball, put it down in the middle and said, if you're good enough, score it from there. He put that one over the bar. Hindsight is a great thing. I should have probably done that.
And
in 95 as well.
And had many forwards tried that trick, Joe? Was that a done thing, Joe, of putting the ball a little bit off centre to get a better angle, or was there a degree of, geez, a goalkeeper knows how to take a penalty here and knows what you wouldn't like?
Davy was the first one I ever saw doing it.
Right.
So there was. I knew what he was at the very minute. I knew where he was at. I knew where it was probably going, but you still couldn't get there quick enough, and he met it on the meet. Now, the one thing I was disappointed was with all the jumping and things, he went on the way back. I'm surprised he didn't land in his arse 3 or 4 times on the way back by fellas meeting him. He must have gone the long way around Whelan anyway, or else he couldn't catch him.
96 is obviously very famous. If we're calling it a kind of trilogy. So it's a red hot day, 23 degrees. Clare are 3 points up, and then Limerick score in the 67th, 70th, 71st minute, and then again in the 71st minute. And the fourth is obviously the most famous score maybe of I don't know, Munster hurling that decade perhaps. But let's have a listen. This is Ger Shane on commentary.
Is there much time left? Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the Light Brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high. He's put it over. Are the All-Ireland champions out? Are Limerick to advance to the Munster final? The fans, the subs are ready to come in. Doesn't go next to near the target, but it doesn't matter. It's all over. Limerick have won. But what a match. What a finish.
Yeah, there we go. Amazing.
See you played that, Joe. Thanks.
Yeah, I played that one. What a moment, Joe.
I didn't hear that, Joe. Could you play it again?
That is nuts. So 67th minute, 70th minute, and then 2 in the 71st minute, Joe, and then for Carey to do that, and instantly that commentary, you just have the memory of Carey running and his neck sticking out, every sinew strained, and it's kind of magic.
Yeah, with 15 minutes go to that match, I was leaning up against the post. Clare were totally in control. I remember looking up to the stand. I actually ended up getting sunstroke the same day. But I was talking, my uncle was doing steward behind the goals, and I said to him, it's time to be booking the holidays, I think. And next minute, Barry Foley just started smacking balls over. And then it all became very real.